end.
Go ahead.
Just ruined it.
No, it would be the best part of my day under any circumstance.
Okay, thank you.
It's going to come down from a captain, maybe, which is a serious dude, to being retired.
Yeah, nobody. Yeah. Just need to see what his plan is.
Yeah, just to make sure. Yes, I got it on
Do you want to stay in here?
I think so.
And
I don't think he's original. California.
and then
But, you know, it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
I'm realizing, trying to figure out what
is this the desk?
you know,
You can have it
the
though.
great
Whoever wants to
thing
take it.
about that house is you have a
I
second
only
bed
go home
thing is I have
for
so
your
many
anyone
kids.
to take it. I'd rather someone take it.
I mean, it's a little, it's a small one-room house.
Are you ready?
Could very comfortably
That's only make one.
live our lives out there.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Because that makes a big difference in quality of life. If we downscale and buy something less expensive and put all that money in our investment account, then we continue.
Okay, 6:31.
Calling to order the Port Hueneme City Council regular meeting for March 19th, 2018. Let's all rise for the flag salute, and I'll follow with the inspiration. You may be seated. Tonight we have a special celebration, the celebration of the city marking its 70th anniversary. And I thank you all for coming out tonight to join us for this momentous occasion. On the night of Wednesday, March 24th, 1948, there were 5 elected city council members who were elected by the community the week prior. And on Wednesday, they were sworn in. They were Bert Dahl, John Pregel, George Miranda, Ansgar Larson, and Ralph McKeon. What was remarkable about this was that it was about a 2/3, 1/3 vote, 2/3 for incorporation of the city, 1/3 not. And so then that Wednesday marked then the start of our small little community. We had a little over 2,000 people. Now we registered just shy of about 23,000. And who knows what the next 70 will bring. So thank you very much. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig,
Here.
Councilmember Hensley,
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey,
Present.
Mayor Pro-Tem Berg, Mayor Straub.
Here. And Mayor Pro Tem Berg has an excused absence. We have item number 4, the agenda in front of us.
Move to approve.
Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
may, I'd like to pull one quick item for discussion. Item 9C, if I might, please.
And that's from the consent agenda.
Second, the consent agenda as amended.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so motion carries on the agenda. And, well, Mr. City Attorney, item number 5 says reportable actions from closed session, but we didn't have a closed session tonight. All right, thank you. And now we go on to item number 6, open forum. This is where we reserve up to 30 minutes for public comments on matters not on the agenda. And I do have 2 speaker cards. I have Tracy Sisson-Phillips, followed by Deb Kelgore.
Good evening, Mayor Schnapp, City Council members. Tracy Sisson-Phillips with the Hueneme Chamber of Commerce, here to provide a quick update on things that are going on at the Chamber. Tomorrow morning is our March Wake Up Hueneme education breakfast. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about estate planning. On Friday is the Chamber's annual community awards and anniversary dinner held at the Bard Mansion, where we will honor our Citizen of the Year, Business Person of the Year, along with other noted members of our community. That'll be starting at 6 p.m., and we look forward to seeing those of you who are able to attend there. On Saturday, March 24th, the American Cancer Society will hold its 6th annual Bark for Life at Bubbling Springs Park, providing it does not rain. And the Cancer Society wanted me to pass on to you your thanks for your continued support of this event here in the city. And lastly, coming up in April, marks the return, the 5th year of Hueneme Beach Sunset Supper, which is our annual food truck event, runs April through October, down at the base of the pier at Port Hueneme Beach. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, thank you.
If I might,
hold on, Tracy.
Tracy, at the 24th is the Barkathon.
Bark for Life, yes.
I have a couple of dogs that are not very well trained. Are they welcome?
As long as you have them on a leash, Councilmember Fib,
We'll be there.
You may bring your dogs down
Okay.
to the park.
Thank you.
All right. The next speaker card we have is Deb Kilgore.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members, City Attorney, and local community members. This may be a little humorous, but I'm a little serious about it. So I came tonight to talk about the Jetty Cats. They're at the jetty. They've probably been there longer than I've been born. Some local community members have taken upon themselves to feed them, sometimes multiple times a day. In my travels up and down the coast of California, I've noticed that some coastal towns actually have art installations where they build Cape Cod-style jetty cat houses. And it's really cute. And my company, Sand Candy, we make bikinis in a garage down the street. We're teaming up with some of the other art collectives around town to propose to the city possibly an art installation at the end of the jetty, 3 to 5 jetty cat houses. We would pay for the fabrication of these art homes. They wouldn't be big, they'd be small. And we'd like to bring that idea up to the City Council for consideration. So this is just kind of a pre-mention to let you know this is what we're thinking, and this is something that we're interested in doing, and we think that the community would benefit from it because there is a little bit of a lack of art in our town, and we're kind of a hip beach town, and so it would be a nice way to start expressing that vibe to the new generation that's moving here or growing up here. It would take something that some people could think of as a nuisance and make it a little comical. You know, you could have a big kahuna-style tiki hut or a lifeguard stand that's cat size or something. Nothing big, nothing obnoxious. But that does in the future also open the doorway to other possible art installations along that boardwalk. People would like to walk up and down that boardwalk. The ocean's great to look at, the weather, the mountains, the incoming ships. But I think we can do better, and I think that a little bit of art would really help to enhance that community vibe. So thank you very much. And I will be, as soon as I figure out how to formally submit a request for an art installation, I will be back.
So if I can just direct you to City Manager Rod Butler for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, are there any other speakers who wish to address the council on matters not on the agenda? All right, so let's go on then to item number 7. And 7A is the 70th anniversary recognition. So at this time, I want to mention a little bit about this beautiful little city that we call Port Hueneme, and we're celebrating our 70th anniversary tonight. 70 years ago, 1948, actually 1948 was a leap year. The U.S. flag only had 48 stars on it. Harry Truman was president, and there was not a vice president serving with him. Ventura County also had 5 incorporated cities. Some of you may know them by heart, but they're Fillmore, Santa Paula, Ventura, Ojai. Can't remember the 5th one. Oxnard, thank you. How come I couldn't remember that?
As hard as we try to forget sometimes.
In 1948, there were other really big things going on in the world. Of course, Israel became a nation on May 14th, 1948, and President Truman then recognized Israel as a nation that same day. Singapore also held its first elections, and the Treaty of Brussels was signed. It also brought about the Marshall Plan, which was hopes to revitalize and rebuild a war-torn Europe. Costa Rica also had its civil war going on, although short-lived. And one of the notable things here is that the World Summer Olympics was held again in London in 1948, and the last one prior to that was 1936 in Berlin. The Roundtable Conference sets to decolonize Dutch Aruba, and they were going to be decolonizing many of the other areas that they had at that point. Also in 1948, the Academy Awards was only 20 years old, but that same year NASCAR was formed. How many of you out there are NASCAR aficionados? So that was formed in that same year. Land Rover, or the car manufacturer known as Land Rover now, exhibited their first car at the Amsterdam Auto Show that year. And American Broadcasting Company began to provide television programming out of Philadelphia. Now here's something really notable here, and you start thinking about 6 degrees of separation, and I would imagine that you and I are thinking it's less than 6 degrees, and I'll tell you about this next one here. The NFC Championship. The Philadelphia Eagles faced the Cleveland Cardinals. It was also very, there was much snow on the ground, and it took the players going out there to move the tarp. It was also known as the Philly Blizzard, and it was played within like 2 hours and 2 minutes. It was one of the quickest games. But that year the Eagles won 7-0, and the 5-yard winning touchdown was scored by Steve Van Buren. And I want to acknowledge his daughter, Gail Van Buren Nordskog, who is actually here in the audience helping us celebrate our 70th. That year as well, the Baltimore Bullets won the Basketball Association of America's BAA title, and U.S. Open was won by Claude Harmon. Claude Harmon, that year, his prize for winning the U.S. Open was $2,500, and he went on to teach or also to help 4 presidents with their golf game: Kennedy, Eisenhower, Nixon, and Ford. The Nobel Prize for Literature was provided to T.S. Eliot. South Korea was established that year, and the World Council of Churches was established. But you might say, when did the city really get formed? There was a plan for Hueneme back in 1874, and that was with Thomas Bard. He was also the one that created the wharf here, that we have the flag monument that recognizes where the original wharf site was. There was a railroad coming through here, and as a matter of fact, there was a lady out of Malibu who was out to build the Hueneme-Malibu Railroad and started out setting some track. It never got finished, but we were named in that. And our connection to the world started really with Thomas Bard and what he did with the wharf. In 1948, there were other notable things that happened. You know, those that were born in 48, and we'll recognize a few tonight, but they include such notables as Kenny Loggins and Alice Cooper, Billy Crystal, and Steven Tyler. Now, I can't get over this, that Steven Tyler is 70 years old this year. Al Gore, Samuel L. Jackson, Stevie Nicks, Judge Clarence Thomas, to name a few. Also, Bryant Gumbel was born in 48, and Prince Charles of England. But 1948 also saw a few deaths, and that was the death of Mahatma Gandhi, Mary Harrison, who was the wife of President Benjamin Harrison, Orville Wright of the Wright brothers, and George Babe Ruth. And so as we mark our 70th, who knows what the next 70 will bring, but it's going to be a remarkable year for the city of Port Hueneme. And with that, let's go to presentations by local elected officials, local legislators recognizing the city for the 70th birthday. I will join you at the podium. I do have a couple that I'll recognize who were not able to make it, but they did share with us some certificates of recognition and a resolution. So we'll start with, if we have the representative from Congresswoman Julia Brownley's office in attendance? No? All right. How about Assemblywoman Jackie Irwin? Okay. Let's see. Then we have Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. I know she provided her document ahead of time. All right. Well, then, you know what? You're next up, Supervisor Kelly Long.
I am lucky. Thank you very much, and congratulations to all. 70 years. It's a wonder. Today I'm here for the board as a representative of the Board of Supervisors of Ventura County in celebration of your 70th year of anniversary. Would you like me to read the resolution? Okay, I'll try and make it short and sweet. Wherein Port Hueneme, a seaside community in Ventura County. The city's name derives from the Chumash word, I can't pronounce it correctly, but Hueneme, that means resting place. When Thomas R. Bard laid out the town in 1972, he called it Hueneme. The name was changed to Port Hueneme after the port of Hueneme was built in 1939. The Hueneme Plains was central to the farming industry that made up western Ventura County, and Hueneme was the end of the line for an up-and-coming woman-owned railway known as the Hueneme Malibu Railroad Company. And whereas on March 24, 2018, the city of Port Hueneme, who observed the 70th anniversary of its incorporation and has planned a year-long events and festivities in the community to celebrate its important milestone. Whereas the city of Port Hueneme was incorporated March 24, 1948, with a population of 2,875 and only 4.4 square miles in its land area. It has grown to a current population of over 21,000 people, and the city of Port Hueneme currently employs 116 individuals on a full-time basis and has a total budget of approximately $41.7 million. And Port Hueneme also has become a charter city effective as December 1996. Whereas the city of Port Hueneme is appreciated by residents for their promotion of a high quality of life through planned development, excellent public facilities, and responsive city services for all of its residents and community. And whereas the city of Port Hueneme is an important part of Ventura County's cultural history, and the county has enjoyed the spirit of friendship and cooperation with the city for over the last 60 years. So therefore, we thank all of our council members, our city, all of our community here today, and join you in this celebration. So thank you. Thank you. Can I get a picture?
All right, next we have Mayor Charlotte Craven from the city of Camarillo.
Well, I'm really happy that your 70th birthday is this year because I'm mayor, and since 1984 I've been a landowner, a landlord, and a utility payer in the city of Port Hueneme. Never lived here, but I think your city's a fine city, and I'm very happy to be able to join your celebration. I'm going to read the words, and maybe everybody won't, but I think somebody wrote them, so somebody needs to read them. So this is a certificate of recognition presented to the city of Port Hueneme on its 70th anniversary. The city of Port Hueneme became the 6th city in Ventura County when incorporated on March 24, 1948. Port Hueneme has grown from an initial population of 2,875 to its current population of 22,399. Isn't it nice we're all getting our numbers the same? The city of Port Hueneme has a rich history dating back to the Chumash Indians, and it plays an important role in Ventura County because of its long-standing relationship with Navy Base Ventura County. In recognition of this significant anniversary, I, Charlotte Craven, Mayor of the City of Camarillo, and jointly with my fellow council members, extend best wishes to the City of Port Hueneme on its 70th anniversary. This is signed by all of our council members. Congratulations.
Next, we'll call on Captain Chris Yonke.
I'll say, although I don't have a written proclamation, I'll give you a verbal proclamation, and I want to say that it's been a great partnership. So if any of you don't know geographically, we are kind of hugged by the city of Port Hueneme. Totally surrounds us, and we feel safe and warm on the old construction battalion over there. And we really enjoy the partnership that we have with the city. No other city, I think, is adjacent right next to us where we have the closeness and the interaction in a lot of areas like public works, police, security, even road and bike races that go on, that we have to share the highways and byways to make sure that they function every day. And I don't think that would be possible without the good partnership. And I've really enjoyed the camaraderie between all the council members and the rotating mayors, and also Rod's been a great partner, probably one of the most responsive city managers on email, that's for sure, that he gets right back to me all the time. So I really value that a lot. And as I'm approaching the twilight of my tour here, I'll be done on June 1st, I've really gained an appreciation of how difficult it is to run a city and run a community. Because the base really is kind of no different. We're just all running around in the same outfit. We have no imagination fashion-wise. Okay? But it is still a community, and it is, I've said this before, my boss's boss says that one of our most important tenets is to maintain a good relationship with your surrounding community. You are a part of them, they are a part of you. And you've got to work together to get things done. And I appreciate all the time we've spent together, and I like the way you phrased it, Madam Mayor, is we'll look back at this 70 years, but we're looking forward to another 70 and beyond. And she said to me earlier, thank you for coming, and I said, well, you can't be neighbors with somebody for 70 years and not come and party with them. So thank you very much for all your partnership.
And next, we have a distinct pleasure of having the Consul General of Mexico, Mr. Roberto Rodriguez.
Thank you for this opportunity, distinguished members of the Chamber of Council, the Council Chamber, Mayor. Well, we want to reinforce reiterate the good relationship that Mexico has with this region, especially with Hueneme, an old port. The Hueneme is one of the oldest ports in America, and one of the young cities in America, and I hope that it's going to be the port of the future, because as you well know, Los Angeles is already saturated, and we are going to take advantage of Port Hueneme in order to improve the exports from Mexico and the imports from the United States. The future is here, and we celebrate with you the 70 years with this plaque, with this recognition of the very good relation that Mexico has with the United States, no matter what. You know what it means. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And we also have a few other people that would like to say a few words. So we'll start with our former mayor, Orvine Carpenter.
I really didn't know I was going to be asked to say a few words. But I was here in the beginning. I know all the 5 council people. And it was quite a chore to get the city incorporated. Oxnard tried to de-incorporate us twice after it happened, but we succeeded. The major project that I was involved with was the extension of the harbor, 40 acres of land inside the city. It was a lot of work, sometimes a lot of fun, but it took a lot of energy to get the city incorporated. There was probably a handful of people that really fought it, but we finally succeeded, and I was pleased that we've came this far. This is a beautiful building. I was glad to be a part of it when we built it, so thank you for asking me to be here.
We also have former Mayor Pro-Tem Jim Daniels. Jim?
I didn't get to spend as many years as Orvine. He had 30 and I had 8. I thought that was enough. But in the time I served on the council, we had a lot of things to take place and continue to build up the city of what it is today. And our city manager we had was an outstanding planner. And when we got down to where they took all our money from us, we set up to where some of our supervisors was in charge of 3 or 4 departments. And that's how good our supervisors was at that time. And we thank them for all the work they did to keep the city intact and running. Thank you very much.
Next we have Sharon Cloris. Did you want to say something? Okay, all right, no problem. Bernadette McDowell, do you want to say something as well? No? All right, we can, okay, come on up.
I also didn't know I was going to be speaking tonight, but I just want to thank you on behalf of the library that it's been wonderful working with the City Council, and we appreciate your support and the city's partnership with the library over the years, because I don't know if people remember, the city actually built the current Ray D. Pruder Library with redevelopment funds and then turned it over to the county. So the library operates the building, the staff provides the collections and maintains the building, and the city continues to maintain the landscape in the parking lot. So we do thank you for all of your continued support and hope that we're a partner for many more years. Thank you.
Sharon, you want to come up?
I too didn't think I was going to say anything, but I will. I've been a resident of the city of Port Hueneme for about 34 years. So when I moved here, the population was about 8,000. And this city has changed dramatically for the better in all the years that I've been here. And I'm proud to say that I've been a part of some of those neat things that have happened. You know, I've seen the walkway out to the lighthouse. I've seen the sidewalks getting bigger. God, I'm trying to think. I was here for Harbor Days. Remember Harbor Days? When Harbor Days was here. I've had the opportunity, actually the city has given me the opportunity to teach their senior exercise program that I've been going on 19 years teaching that. So I've been keeping this city healthy for almost 19 years, ladies and gentlemen, and that's been a real privilege for me to be able to do that. I've raised 2 kids here. The ocean, the beach is just absolutely amazing. I was here when the pier was a T and now it's just not a T anymore, but just all the neat things that have evolved. I don't know if any of you know those little plastic bags that are scattered around the city that when you're taking your unruly dogs, and it's all about the alpha, you know that. Mr. Tom Fig, who's the elephant? But you know, that was not in the city, and I was on the Fine Arts and Rec Commission for about 5 years and thought to myself, well, gosh, how come the city's never provided that? I brought it to the council. You guys said that's a great idea, and we went ahead and did it, which was neat. The Hueneme Beach Festival that we had for umpteen years, I was on the commission to forward that to get that going. So the city of Port Hueneme has been an amazing place for me to be. I love this town, and thank you all for everything that you do. It's just a fabulous, fabulous place to live, to raise a family, and I look forward to all the new things that you're going to be doing. So thank you very much. Pleasure.
We have Tracy.
Well, happy 70th anniversary, City of Port Hueneme. I was sitting there and started doing the math, trying to figure out how long I had been here, and I'm kind of aghast to say that I've been here over half the time that the city's been a city. And yes, I was very, very, very young when I got here. The city and the chamber often get mixed up. People call the chamber looking for city services. People call the city looking for chamber services. And that's partly because we are so very intertwined. Some like to say that without the chamber there wouldn't be a city, but I like to say that without the city there wouldn't be a chamber. You have been a partner with us as long as I have been with the chamber. Your staff goes above and beyond to do what they can do to support the chamber in helping to build our business community and also provide our residents with fun activities. And just a little quote from Helen Keller, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." And I think that embodies the relationship that the chamber has with the city. Again, congratulations.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to say a few words? Yes.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, City Attorney, and all of the wonderful Port Huenemans that came out. My name is Becky Haycox, and I'm very, very happy to be representing the Port of Hueneme here tonight. Also, on a personal note, it gives me extreme pleasure to be here, standing in front of you as well, because Art Haycox was my grandfather. And Orvine and my dad worked for my grandfather at his post office back in the day. And it just is so wonderful, and I know that Art and Ann would be so happy to see this and to see us together. So we're here to celebrate the City of Port Hueneme's 70th year anniversary and the historic friendship between the city and the Port of Hueneme. We congratulate the city on its rich history from its early days as a modest wharf town to its incarnation now, a beautiful waterfront city home to the thriving naval base in the port. Your great city has produced dynamic leaders, of course, the Bards, the Levies, countless others, and their legacy reflects the current spirit of the city's dynamic independence. So here's to your 70 years, and here's to 70 more, and 70 beyond that. Congratulations. Thank you so much. It's so good to meet you.
Most importantly, at this time, we'd like to recognize the residents who have either turned 70 already this year or will be turning 70. And I believe, Eli, you might be the only one here. Do we have another? No? But, okay, come on up. Eli, can I have you stand? What's your name? Linda McDougall and Eli Wiggins. All right. Happy birthday. Let's do a photo. Very good. So what we have for you let's get the candy at the bottom. What we have for you is a hat that has the new logo that says 70th anniversary, a special pin, a few other things in there to recognize the birthday that you have with our city. Thank you. Thank you. So tonight really marks the beginning of a year-long celebration for the city. We continue on with a few other events. And do you have a separate no? Okay, all right. So what you'll find at the back table is a list of events from tonight through March 23rd, 2019. We'll continue on with a few things going on in the spring, including Arbor Day observation of 70 seedlings and the kickoff to the Carmen Nichols Community Garden grand opening. Over the summer, we've had a number of years where we've presented movies in the park, and that's where we take a movie out into a community park and show, and it's basically for the young at heart, but really the youngsters. So we've shown movies from Legoland to Frozen to wonderful, wonderful movies. This year we're actually taking it to the youngsters at Hueneme Bay as well. So we're going to be having some 1948 movies showing. Yes, you can, Jim. And that's going to be a special treat. We also have historical tours of Port Hueneme kicking off, as well as a grand reopening of our tennis court and basketball courts. We also hope to have cemented then our sister city relationship with the city of Ensenada, Baja California, Mexico over the summer as well. We continue on with a time capsule that we will be putting together, and the Historical Museum is going to be joining us along with the Hueneme School District in getting that wrapped up for the fall. And of course then in winter we also have not only our holiday tree lighting that we do with the chamber, but we're looking forward to a mayor's bike ride from the lighthouse, from the Wharf Plaza to the lighthouse and back. And then we'll conclude early spring. So make sure you identify a few of these events, if not all of them, to come join us for the 70th celebration that we have throughout the year. At this time, let's go ahead and recess.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Council would like to make comments.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd certainly like to announce that the Hueneme Historical Museum has acquired a number of papers from the Miranda family, including Bill Miranda's scrapbook that's just stuffed full of newspaper articles. And pertinent to today, there's a collection of programs from previous anniversaries, going back to the 15th anniversary. The 15th anniversary the city didn't have a lot of money for celebrations. That sounds familiar. But there's a signed letter by Barry Goldwater, of all people, congratulating the city on their 15th anniversary. There are, I lost my train of thought, but we've had a chance to, barely had a chance to look at, oh yes, the one document I'm trying to remember, and probably the most important one, is a list of all the people that signed the original petition for incorporation. Some very familiar names are on there, and to discover that that existed is quite a thrill, and you know, that's you know, well, Beverly's working on that right now. That will be in the museum collection, and you know, we thank all the Miranda family for that. You know, Bill Miranda, for those who don't know, was you know, our first real city manager, and did so much to get this city going and off the ground. And to have that collection is just a wonderful thing for the museum.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? No? All right. So then at this time, we will recess in the lobby for refreshments and activities, and we'll reconvene then to the regular meeting in about 10 minutes. Thank you. continuing on with the city council hearing. We are on item number 8, public hearing, plan development conditional use permit. Yes. Yeah, we're still not at 9, we're on 8. Yeah, so, Mr. Tony Stewart, you're presenting for this item?
That is correct, Mayor. Right. Well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, staff. This is a presentation of our 4th cannabis dispensary brought before you this evening. This is plan development slash CUP number 838 and development agreement number 839. The applicant, Mr. Kintu Patel, is requesting approval to operate both a medicinal and recreational cannabis dispensary with ancillary delivery. The location is at 2675 North Ventura Road, Suites 106 and 107. Per the cannabis ordinance, these uses are allowed in the C1, R4, and M1 zones, subject to approval of a certificate of approval, the conditional use permit, and development agreement. This site is zone C1, so that potentially does allow this use, and it's consistent with our general plan land use designation of commercial. The applicant obtained their conditional certificate of approval back on January 19th of 2018 as a result of providing an acceptable application package, which included discussions of safety, community benefits, regulatory compliance, etc. As I mentioned, the site is located at 2675 North Ventura Road, Suites 106, 107. The uses surrounding it are residential units within Wainimi Bay to the north. To the south is the 99-cent commercial shopping center. To the east is North Ventura Road with uses in the city of Oxnard beyond that. And to the west is multifamily residential. State law requires that such uses be no closer than 600 feet to a school. In this case, the nearest school is over 2,100 feet away, and that's McKinnon Elementary in Oxnard. The applicant is not proposing any changes other than to upgrade the site itself for ADA accessibility requirements. 36 parking spaces serve the site, and since this is a use that's similar to any other type of retail use, no changes in the parking are required for this project. So quick aerial showing the site. Let's see, that North Ventura Road, Channel Islands, the 99-cent store, and then the site itself. And a site plan showing the 2 buildings within the subject office complex, and the 2 subject suites are on the first floor of this building here. We do have an existing dispensary, which is the one owned by Bob Tatum, which is in these 2 suites on the first floor of this building. The existing suites will be combined into approximately 1,050 square foot dispensary. The applicant's also leasing several other suites throughout both of the buildings. I've listed them there. When Suite 108 is vacated by the current tenant, which is the ambulance service, the applicant is proposing to lease that space and expand the dispensary. Any expansion of the dispensary or any other cannabis related uses will require a modification to these applications and bringing it back before the City Council for approval at that time. So quickly, the existing suites are located here, and this shows basically the dispensary location with the lobby and the actual retail room, as well as office, and then the storage areas in the back there. A couple photographs showing the existing building itself. The suites would be located down in this area here. And another example of the building itself. For the use, the hours of operation will be from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily, and that is allowed per the ordinance. Customers, as well as staff, will be minimum 21 years of age. Odor control will be HVAC carbon filters, as well as sealed rooms. There will be on-site security with 2 to 3 guards. In fact, one of the offices that the applicant is renting will be the on-site office for security, so they won't just be coming in on a daily basis, they'll be there working on site. Staffing would be local residents' first choice as the employees, and again, must be 21 years of age or older. And then the applicant provided a list of community benefits, including donations to local organizations, participating in city improvement projects, including, as I was just told before coming up here, potentially working with the young lady with regard to those cat houses we talked about earlier this evening. So. Conditions of approval for the conditional use permit have been generated by the reviewing agencies and are listed in the resolution. With regard to the development agreement, cities can enter into development agreements. Since the city of Port Hueneme does not currently have a cannabis tax, we have, per the cannabis ordinance and implementing resolution, decided to use the tool of the development agreement to require certain things of an applicant. In return, though, the city does guarantee development rights in place at the time the application is approved are vested. So in this case, the applicant would pay a contractual payment of 5% to of the business's annual gross revenues to the general fund, maintain all books and records accurately, and pay for up to 2 audits per year, and obtain a certificate of occupancy for the dispensary within 1 year of approval or that the date that the development agreement becomes effective. And these are standard requirements for all of the dispensaries that we processed thus far. Quickly, the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And then finally, we require all of our applicants to provide a 3-year pro forma of what they expect their gross revenues to be. In this case, the applicant has estimated that the gross revenues would be approximately 2.5 million the first year, 4.35 the second year, as well as the third year. This in turn would, at 5%, generate for the city approximately $127,650 the first year, and then for years 2 and 3, just under $217,900. So with that, the staff's recommendation based on the facts and findings in the staff report is to open the public hearing and take evidence, close the hearing and consider this evidence from both the testimony and from the public. After considering this evidence, adopt the attached resolution that conditionally approves the conditional use permit and determines the project is exempt from CEQA, as well as introduce the ordinance approving the development agreement, which would be accompanied by title only, and waive further reading with approval to follow at the next regularly scheduled city council meeting. And 4, take such additional related action as may be desirable. And with that concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. David Moss, who represents the businesses here in the audience, as well as several of his consultants, should you have any questions for his team. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing and take testimony and documentary evidence.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Fig.
Was there a request for any ex parte communication disclosures? Maybe I missed that. I was a little late getting seated.
Yeah, so my document doesn't have that, but Mr. City Attorney, can you address that?
Yes, as the council knows, it adopted a rule requiring council members to state any ex parte communications that a member may have had regarding the matter before it. It's not on the agenda, but it is a standing requirement.
All right, so at this time then, we'll just open up and see if there were any ex parte communications.
Yes, I've had communications with the applicant. It was actually prior to this meeting this evening. It was for the previously agendized item for a hearing. The applicant was concerned that the city was continuing or recommending a continuance of that hearing because of issues associated with tenancy in the building. I communicated that, I believe, to Mr. Butler as well as our city attorney with the hope that they could resolve it. And I'm looking forward whether it be now or later when there's discussion, to hear what the outcome was, because we did continue the hearing, and presumably that was for the purpose of trying to resolve some of these tenant-landlord issues. So whether we do it now, we do it later, but I'm at least disclosing that I had conversations regarding this particular issue, and not prior to this particular meeting, but for the previous hearing that was scheduled and continued to this date.
Madam Mayor, would you like me to address that issue at this point?
Yes, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you. Yes, the matter was continued on staff's recommendation at its initial presentation to the council. And the reason was a late receipt of a letter from the attorney for the existing dispensary in the building regarding, and I don't think it offers much, adds much to the discussion to go through the various points or allegations that were made. The primary concern that raised, and we had a very positive meeting with the landlord and the representatives of the dispensary that's before you tonight. And as we made clear to them, the only issue that we as staff had was that the city's whole program of being in the forefront of cannabis businesses in this county is based upon having the revenue that they generate under our arrangements with them to help with the city's structural budget deficit, which, as you know, has been the council's primary focus and directive to staff. The issue that was raised is that there was some question about whether or not Freedom First would be allowed to operate as an adult use facility under the terms of the lease. We raised that issue, and the representatives that were there in our meeting agreed to have discussions with Freedom First about it. We weren't there to force any kind of specific agreement, but we wanted the parties to try and work that out so that we would have 2 operating adult facilities on site. That was our only concern, and that was to maximize revenue. Without going into gross detail about it, the landlord made an offer to Mr. Tatum, and Mr. Tatum and his attorney have negotiated with them. Having seen that there were offers on the table and negotiations underway to resolve the issue, staff stepped out of it because we're not here to dictate anything to anybody, but we just want to see that the issue is clarified before we move forward. So at this point, the last I heard, was that there is an offer pending, that there is actually some documentation which is awaiting signature that resolves the issue. I don't know on what terms, but the bottom line is that having facilitated that discussion, I think that the city has gone as far as it can or should. And so we brought the matter back for your consideration tonight. I informed, and I believe Mr. Stewart has informed representatives of the applicant tonight that we were going to be recommending approval based on the issues and the matters that Mr. Stewart discussed. And we have great hopes that the 2 will be able to work amicably to their mutual benefit and to the joint benefit of the city. Okay.
All right. And do you want to address with the ex parte at any point here?
No, it's been disclosed. It doesn't sound like it's any kind of issue to me, so.
Okay. All right. Very good. And was there any other? Yes.
I thought Mr. Figg still had the table on this.
I have questions, but whether or not you want to take testimony at this point. So what you're telling me, Mr. City Attorney, is that the fact that we continued the hearing because of an issue that was on the outer realm of a land use matter, which was what we're actually being asked to take action on, that it's not reflected in any of the documents for approval, that any a relationship that exists between the landlord and the tenant isn't reflected in the development agreement or the conditions of approval. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, very good. But I thank you for disclosing that. So as we open then the public hearing, we'll take testimony. And I do have one speaker card.
I'll be able to speak after the public testimony.
Yeah. Stephen Gamma. Stephen, are you here? Oh, great. All right.
Thank you, Mayor Schnapp, excuse me, council members and city staff. Over the last several months in the bank, in the supermarket, in the city hall here, everybody seems to want to get into the marijuana business here in Hueneme. And I understand numerous applications, numerous inquiries have been made, and I'm just wondering, have the city council or staff considered the law of diminishing returns? I mean, how many dispensaries can we pack in this little city? And are we not at some point going to hurt the city because we have too many of them? Therefore, maybe some will go out of business, some will do good, but I mean, at what point do we stop approving dispensaries? I don't know the answer to that question, but it just came to mind. You're considering to approve a second dispensary in one building on one corner, which is on the corner of Oxnard and Port Hueneme. So it just seems to me that perhaps that question should be addressed, because I know that there's other entities at this side of town looking for it, and looking at that article in the Star a few months ago, are we really going to become Pot Hueneme? I mean, if we have 10 stores, 11 stores, I don't know what that number is, but I would just want to bring to your attention the law of diminishing returns, because if you have too many people trying to do the same business in this close area, it may not do very well. Anyways, that's my comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak on this matter? All right, so that we open it up for questions from the dais. Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm somewhat, not as far as eminent domain or any of the other good stuff. I live 2 blocks from there. I've worked a long time with Abu Joseph Dewan to get that building paying. I mean, it was a broke city, and he was really hurting. And thankfully, he got it to that point. And apparently, you folks purchased it, or somebody did. Mr. Gama brought up one point. I don't know how far we want to go to have one in every block right next door to each other. But one of the primary concerns that really concerned me is, Mr. Figg brought it up, is we were told there was going to be an agreement that is spelled out in writing. I anticipated it being in writing. That was assumptive of me, I suppose. And as I understand, there's no agreement in this thing. So we apparently are trying to take favor of a landlord to wipe out $100,000 or whatever Mr. Tatum put into his section, instead of getting along in a nice, friendly way. When this whole process started, I'm sorry, it isn't friendly, okay. When this whole thing started, we had, and it's in our ordinance, that it's supposed to be honesty, integrity, and I don't know exact verbiage, but we want to have proprietors who we feel are trustworthy, and likewise. It really bothers me that we don't have a relationship with people like this. It seems like a very, from what I'm understanding, kind of a combative relationship. If I might digress for a second, Mr. Tatum, could I call you up, please?
Chair's direction.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. Mr. Tatum, thank you. Could you just briefly kind of describe where you're sitting at now and how you got here and what the circumstances stand for?
Well, at 12:27 today, I thought we had an agreement. And our landlord, Mr. Zaharoni, showed up at the building today. Obviously, in a mood that was not friendly, and I can't read that. So this is between us and the landlord, I understand, but we did not have an opportunity to apply for recreational, because simply at the time that we did it, I mean, part of being a pioneer is that you sort of jump the gun on certain things, and part of being the pioneer in this case, we missed the opportunity to apply for medical and recreational at the same time. So that's really what we're asking for. We're willing to give up almost 3 years of a lease. We're willing to give up the future of our business and trying to find a relocation, whether it is in this city or another city. And that's kind of hard to do when you're starting a business. And what we tried to do was to have, as I've always had in my entire career, a good relationship with whoever we deal with, but this one didn't start out very good, and I don't know where it is today. So,
was there any argument, harsh words, or anything used today or recently in these negotiations?
It did bother me that my wife witnessed the same thing that a couple of our customers witnessed today, and I'm not going to tell you what was said.
How much money have you invested? I'm assuming the 100,000, but how much time and efforts and so on have you got to this point?
Well, this is 2 years of time.
2 years, okay.
And we're a local family, and we're trying to start a business here. And we've had positive response so far. And I'm not against competition or people that are in the business. I mean, you have McDonald's and Burger King very close together. But we have endured some pretty bad things, and I'm not talking about Mr. Zaharoni over here, but we've endured some pretty bad things so far. So we feel a little beaten up, and all I know is at this point I have a couple of blank documents in my folder. And I just don't want this to be, yes, we're negotiating, we're doing what the city said, and then after approval, see you later. That's the way I feel today.
Now, let me ask you this, if I may. You mentioned the fact that, or an issue, maybe a fact, maybe not, that you applied strictly for the medical because that was the procedure at that time before you get to your...
That was all that was available.
So when you made that lease with Mr. Abu Dawan, was there an anticipation that this was step one to step two, so you would have...
There was a discussion with Mr. Abu Dawan that if things changed with the city, then we would change the lease at some point. We wanted to make the lease as succinct as possible when we came to the city and we went to the state.
Okay, now was there anything in your discussion with Mr. Dawan, Abu Dawan, or in writing that you were restricted only to a medicinal office?
The lease specifically states that.
But there was an anticipation, as I understand, with all the other people that has licenses or are working towards it, that that's a necessary hoop that they had to jump through to get to the recreational part.
In the hundreds of hours I spent talking with Mr. Abu Dawan. We went over that a number of times. There is nothing in writing on that.
Okay, now do you feel that he was aware of it, or was it implied that the next step forward would be to recreational?
Yeah, I believe he,
Okay.
it's my feeling that he believed that, yes.
And just as a side note to everybody else, it was quite a landfall for Mr. Dewan, because he was suffering trying to get along with this situation, and now he's got his footprint out of it. What do you see as a possible solution?
Well, we have an agreement on the table, and I have a pen. We could sign these agreements tonight and be done with it.
Do we have the agreement on the table?
I have the agreement
Are you
copies.
satisfied with the agreement?
Yes, that's what was
Okay.
negotiated.
And would you gentlemen be agreeable to the agreement as presented? I'm assuming that one of you guys.
And so my question is that a requirement for DEO getting the approval that I sign this agreement?
I'll ask for you to come up and say next if I can, okay? I don't want to interrupt you.
So Mr. Hensley, can I reel it
Go
back
ahead.
in a little
Reel
bit
it back
here?
in.
All right, so the questions that you've presented to Mr. Tatum are okay.
Tatum.
I believe that we don't step into, negotiating any agreement. That has to be through the parties themselves. You could encourage it, but we're not
encourage
there
it.
to broker be at that table, but I appreciate the questions you
Okay,
have for
thank you.
Mr. Tatum. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Tatum as he's up here at the podium? Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
thanks. Okay. So with that, are there any other questions from the dais for Mr. Stewart? No? Yeah, Councilmember Fig.
Yes, Mr. Stewart, I'm impressed by the community benefit aspects of the proposal. I think there's financial considerations, and then there's community involvement considerations. And I know we had this discussion previously with other applicants to make certain that those are somehow embodied in the development agreement, so that when there is a review on an annual basis for performance, that it also takes into account what's been offered to the city. But I don't see that in the development agreement, so I don't understand quite how we link performance to what's been represented in terms of these benefits. I'm very impressed by the benefits, by the way. It has preferential hiring for Port Hueneme residents. It has minimum wage, which is far and above state-required minimum wage requirements, and an assortment of other offerings to community groups. And I don't see that linkage in the development agreement. So can you help me here?
Sure. On page 2 of the development agreement, section D under recitals talks about all of the different aspects of the application, such as providing the long-term source of employment opportunities, assisting in the revitalization of the community's economic development base, providing the city directly with additional revenue in the form of the increase in certain, here it's called out as taxes, but with the funds, the 5%, helping the general fund, et cetera. And these are all considered contractual payments. And this would be one of the requirements per the development agreement. And this is something that we would be checking on an annual basis to make sure that everything that's presented in both in the application as well as the conditions of approval for the conditional use permit, the plans and whatnot are all complied with.
Okay, I understand that the recitals reflect that this is what's been offered, but there's nothing in the development agreement that ties the compliance aspects of the agreement back to those recitals. So I'm curious here why we haven't tightened this up, and we've had this discussion on previous applicants to make certain that we have the ability to go beyond the specifics of the project to the benefits to the community that have been offered. And I would ask our city attorney, do we have a legal basis in which to simply rely on the recitals as part of a compliance review process to assure that we're getting what we expected?
Yes.
Okay. Then let the record reflect that, because I don't see the connection in the development agreement. And I would ask that in the future that the language of the development agreement be very explicit when we get into things of compliance review, that the scope of that review would include the representations in the recitals. And I would like to ask the applicant, because I was very impressed with what you offered, would that be acceptable to you to have more specific language that holds you accountable to the benefits that you've offered as part of the renewal of the development agreement when we do a compliance review on an annual basis? Would you please come forward and represent that?
How you doing? Yes, we would be okay with that provision.
Okay, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just, we've had this discussion in the past, and I'm not convinced that we have that linkage between what you've offered and our ability to say at the end of the day, a year from now, that you, in good faith, have put forward what you represented. And that's all I'm really asking for.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to put you in that position.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, but can you stay here? Yeah, so
I'm David Moss.
Pardon?
David Moss.
David Moss, okay, all right. And do we have, you're representing then the applicant?
I'm representing DBO Investments, yes.
Okay. Is Mr. Kintu Patel here?
He couldn't make it. He had a death in the family, so he couldn't make it today.
Okay. Could I ask you a couple of questions
Sure.
here? So why Port Hueneme for your business?
We're looking at many different areas. Port Hueneme, like many municipalities, opened up cannabis, and we are proactively looking for opportunities in cities that are interested in having cannabis operations.
Do you currently have another cannabis license somewhere else?
Kintu Patel has a cannabis license in Santa Ana, a dispensary called From the Earth. I'm a vice president of operations, and I've been working with Kintu for about the last year and a half or so in the industry and working on this project as well.
Okay. What's his, before he stepped into cannabis, what other businesses did Mr. Patel have?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. He graduated college, and I think he went into the cannabis business. He's been in the business for close to 10 years now.
Okay, all right. Are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes?
I wasn't done.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's
Okay.
all right.
I saw him step away, and I thought
No,
that was
no,
the
that's
conclusion.
fine.
All right, go ahead, Councilmember Fig.
And this isn't a question specific to this application, but maybe it's a question to our staff of, the state is starting to rethink their taxation structure, recognizing that they, if they go too far, they're going to kill the goose, and everybody's going to go back to the shadows, okay? And so there's discussion that maybe those, what the state now is somewhere around 20% plus of gross revenues on their taxation structure, that they may be looking to bring that down. And so we, on the other hand, are fixed at a certain percentage. Is there an ability for us to revisit these percentages if, in fact, the state decides to pull back from, they're pretty aggressive on their tax structure, that we may be able to participate in the benefit of that by increasing our share?
I don't know that that's a question
I
for me
know.
to answer
I'm
or
throwing this
respond
out,
to.
and maybe it's more for staff, because we're fixed regardless of what the state does. And yet, I'm not sure that we were prepared to hear the state finally maybe, coming to their senses that we're, we may be, working against our interests by overtaxing cannabis businesses. Maybe this is a staff question, and maybe it's too late in the course of your negotiations on this particular development agreement, but we may want to have a clause to revisit our percentage of take depending on the state's action. Because I think the 5% that the city has come up with is a reasonable relative to what other taxing entities are charging. We don't want to push cannabis back into the shadows. On the other hand, if those agencies that drove us to a 5% are willing to pull back, maybe it's an opportunity for the city to revisit what's an appropriate percentage locally. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I think
I
that's,
know.
that's for you
and
all
it's
to
not in the
discuss
agreement
and-
right now, and I don't know. I don't want to negotiate on the fly, but that's what caught my attention, that maybe we need to provide a reopener at some point, and whether we can do it tonight on this particular agreement or future agreements, it's something that might be worth looking at.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Patel? Is it?
David Moss,
David Moss. M-O-S-S or M-O-C-K?
M-O-S-S.
I spent 20 years in the military. My hearing is shot. Okay. One of the things that we were anticipating when we started walking into these issues is that we didn't want to have a warring between, we kind of want to have a kumbaya and everybody kind of work together. Everybody's going to have, there's not a lot of niches right now, although there's some that's going to be growing, there's going to be some that's producing, there's going to possibly a bed and breakfast, so those are ancillary operations, and it could be a great benefit to us. My big concern is that we don't start a war. One of the things when the state pushed for this, one of their interests is holding it for the first year or two for smaller businesses to get involved. Now, it's pretty difficult for a small business to come up with $100,000, but everything is relative. In other words, it isn't some guy who has 10,000 or 5,000 and jumps into it. But we, as a city, need to have a good image and a good relationship. We don't want, somebody had suggested to me a while back, a Kush event on the beach. That draws a lot of hippie type, and we can't do it on the beach anyway. I don't think the chief of police would appreciate that. The biggest line that I'm considering is, two of them, that probably both of your teams, I don't know if you ever get along or not, but if it could have some sort of working relationship until that point, and then we all work together, including the other dispensaries, growth areas, so on in the community here. I feel it's a very bad footing to get started off on, and I hope something can be rectified before we take the final step on this situation. I haven't had an opportunity to meet you, but that's open just as long as I'm not considered interfering with helping you get your license, okay? That's my suggestion. Do you feel that you can work out some sort of amenable agreement?
100%. I mean, I feel, again, the issues that were brought up are really not my issues. Those are issues between the landlord, Dan Zeroni, and the tenant. As far as
You're the representative, though.
I'm the representative
Yep.
of the applicant, and the issues you were talking about were more associated with the owner of the building and the other tenant. I've never met Mr. Tatum until just tonight. I would love to have a good working relationship with Mr. Tatum and Freedom First. And I think that we can certainly get to a point where if they're willing to work and have a good working relationship with us, we're certainly willing to have a good working relationship with them as well.
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor?
Yes, so let me just make sure I know the different parties involved here, because it's kind of getting diluted. So who's this gentleman here in the that you referred to, Councilmember Hensley?
That's
Yes,
the
please.
landlord, Mr. Zaharoni.
Oh,
Okay, good.
Okay.
He owns
I'm
the
trying-
building. It has been represented to us that he is not a principal in the business.
Okay.
And although he has other business relationships with some of the members of the parties that are doing the application, this is not one of them. He bought the building because of a separate interest in the economic opportunity for it. You know, we have been,
Yeah.
we are maintaining
Yes.
a separation between the discussions between the landlord and what's appropriate with them, and the discussions with the applicant, with whom we are discussing a discretionary approval.
Okay. So, I just want to just know your name. That's the only question I have.
Dan Zaharoni, and I'm the manager, Dan Zaharoni.
Dan, okay.
And I'm the manager of Wanimi Verde, Wanimi Partners, which is the owner of the building.
The owner of the building.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Dan.
Sure.
All right.
And I would like to make the statement that in our meeting did not consist only of the discussion of the issues with Freedom First, but also a couple of other matters that staff was concerned about. And Mr. Zaharoni and Mr. Moss, and I've forgotten that young lady's name, but yeah, she was very, very amicable and was very helpful in our discussions. And they cleared up, and I thought in a credible way, the issue of what the relationship between the parties was. So it resolved the concern that we had. Now, I did make the point to them that if that turns out to have been any kind of a misrepresentation, that it could lead to a termination of their CUP if that were the council's decision. So, but they've been very candid about that issue, and I would say that I thought our whole discussion with them was amicable and friendly, and Mr. Zaharoni and Mr. Moss were very reasonable about attempting to resolve what our concern was. And I told them that, you know, we're not going to manage Mr. Zaharoni's building for him. We did have an issue about whether or not the effectiveness of one of our dispensaries would be injured by their, if they have a dispute, which apparently they've had some discussion about. We've made it clear that we would like for them to work that out, but it's not appropriate for us to intervene in private businesses beyond that point. And I do want to make it clear, Councilmember Hensley, you made a reference, you said that there would, you were told there'd be a written agreement about this. Staff hasn't, to my knowledge, made such a representation, but we were hoping there would be, but between the parties, and there may still be. I mean, hopefully people of reason and good conscience can reach a resolution of those things, but that's as far as staff felt it was appropriate to take it, and we wouldn't have continued the matter if we'd had more time to work on it, but the statements were received, you know, at the 11th hour to raise the issues, and we really felt we needed to have a discussion.
Yes,
Can I just make a
Mr.
quick comment?
Sure.
Dan Zaharoni again. And just addressing Councilmember Hensley's earlier statement regarding us getting along, things starting off on a bad note. I just would like to represent, and Mr. Green has also kind of recited some of the things that happened. When I first had a meeting with some of the council members and with Mr. Butler was there and the chief of police, I made very clear that it was my intention as a landlord to get along with Freedom First. And in fact, I left that meeting with several of your representatives and went directly over back to the building to meet with Mr. Devine, his lawyer, Mr. Tatum and his son, where I was trying to work things out. I mean, my intention is not to fight. My intention is not to be combative. And honestly, I thought we had worked everything out pretty well. We left the meeting. We shook hands. Seemed to me like everything was okay. Subsequent to that, they provided a permit application regarding their signage. I signed it that day. Had no issues at all. Didn't understand that there was even a problem. Didn't speak to him after that. Was kind of stayed separate because I don't want there to be even the illusion, you know, or the perception that something is wrong. And then in the last meeting, with the last city council hearing last month, this letter came in from Mr. Devine that day, making all of these pretty amazing allegations against me. Allegations which, and against me personally, that I do not agree with. I think they were absolutely false. I think they completely miscategorized some of the things. Just to give one example, one of the things that Chief Salinas had said is coordinate your security plan with them. And so what I had done at my own cost is I'd put security cameras up in that building because there was a problem with the homeless and some other things. And so I, on my own dime, put up security cameras. And Misty Gary's sitting here. She's going to be running the dispensary for DBO, and she's local. So I sent an email to Mr. Tatum saying, hey, if you have any problems, if there's any type of security issues, call Misty. She's the one who's speaking directly to the security company. I thought that was a very nice outreach on my part to try and coordinate and make sure they understood what was going on and things were coordinated. In the letter that this council received at the last hearing, I was accused of intimidation and demanding that they had to talk to her, which really was not what occurred at all. I was doing my best to reach out to the lieutenant and work things out. So I agree with you 100%. I don't want to be combative. I don't want to be litigious. I don't want to have a problem. I want to work things out, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'll continue doing that as long as I own that building.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Zaroni. I want to make the point that this is one of the reasons why we don't want to get into these issues. It just gets to a he said kind of thing. It's got to be left to these parties to work out these details for themselves. We had a limited involvement, which was just to make it clear because we received this problem issue and we didn't know if it was true or not, and still don't take any position on that, that it's important to us that both of these dispensaries be successful. That is our goal and the result of our process, and we wanted to make it very clear to both parties that that's what the city is hoping for. But beyond that, it's just not appropriate for us to involve ourselves in these kinds of things. We're not we're not investigators. We can't determine truths. I mean, they've got attorneys that you know how attorneys are. So we should just take the issue before us, which is a straightforward CUP and development agreement situation. The council should consider the evidence that's contained in the record. You can consider any evidence that was presented orally. I would submit to you that discussions about whether or not things were done and which there's disagreement is not really evidence because it's not pertinent to really the issues before you. But certainly you can consider anything that was said. But I think it's for everybody's best benefit if we just focus on the job that the city has here.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Yeah, I appreciate the city attorney's comments. There's a question I was going to ask. You answered it before I asked it, actually. I've got a certain level of discomfort with this situation. I mean, obviously, we've got a landlord-tenant dispute. City should not be in that. We can't do it. We're not good at it, and it's none of our business. Each application has to be considered as a discrete effort, and I don't like to hear the words hoping. And my fear is that the city is being used as a point of leverage in the middle of this dispute, and that concerns me greatly. I don't know how we can avoid that because we've got a ministerial obligation here. We have a duty to fairly hear every application that comes before us and to judge it on the evidence that's presented here. And I think you'll tell us there's a lot of case law that says we can't go outside those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So I guess my question for staff is this, both from Mr. Stewart and from the attorney. Are we satisfied with the completeness of this application? Are we thoroughly satisfied that this meets the needs of the city and it's a fair application and at least in terms of structure and content, it meets all our requirements?
Yes, it has. We've vetted this through actually since it came in September. It's been quite some time. We've vetted it very thoroughly, and we do feel that at this point, based on what's been presented to us, as Mr. Green has mentioned before, we can only go so far, but based on what we have, we do feel that this is complete, and this is why we're here this evening in front of you.
Okay. Mr. Green?
Yes, I agree. You know, my role is not really to evaluate the completeness of the application, but staff has been very comfortable with that. Any issues that we have discussed have been resolved to the satisfaction of myself and Mr. Butler and Mr. Stewart. I feel that that this is it meets the requirements that we have been applying. And in all other dispensary reviews. And so that's why I stand with Mr. Stewart's recommendation that you approve it as presented. I will say one other thing about the leverage point that you made. I also had that concern. And I think it's fair to say that the applicant came into our meeting with the attitude that we apparently were acting to protect Mr. Stewart's interests. And I strove to make it clear that I'm sorry, Mr. Tate. I'm sorry, are you in the business again? No, not yet. What the heck was I saying? Oh yes, and I made it very clear to them that we were not going to, that what we wanted them to do was engage in a good faith negotiation. However it came out, it came out. We just would like for them to take a shot at resolving the issue of the adult use. And our clear statement to them was if they entered into something that has the appearance of good faith negotiation, that's as far as we were going to consider it. And we would be coming back to the council with a recommendation for approval, as we had previously been intending and did in fact present. I think that they left the meeting with a much more comfortable attitude about what our intent was. I communicated with Mr. Tatum and his attorney and advised them that, you know, we'd had this meeting, that we expected there to be some discussion, that we would not be protecting his back, that he was have to do whatever he could, and that as long as we saw them entering into the discussions, that was the issue. So, you know, I'm disappointed it hasn't resulted in a written agreement yet, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. You know, we've done the maximum that we ought to be doing here. The sole reason for doing it, and I want to make this point crystal clear for the record, is to protect a legitimate public concern of the city, which is the success of both dispensaries and the revenues it will generate to the city to address our structural deficit. That's the reason we did it, the only reason. And I would also suggest that the only thing that was done was a quick continuance, and the only reason for that was because of the 11th hour that we became aware of the issue. You know, there's no inherent right to have it considered at any particular time, but we didn't want to inconvenience the applicant any more than had to be the case, just for us to understand that something was going to occur. So with that, I'll answer any questions. Or
Okay, thank you, sir.
Do you have any more questions, Councilmember Sharkey? Yeah, I do as well, but do you have any questions?
No, they're not questions. It's, I think what we're going to need is a more detailed recording of this meeting. A lot of things have been stated, representations, desires, what we're going to hold the applicant accountable to, as well as the previous applicant, when it comes time to compliance review. Because united we stand, divided we fall. That's what I hear here. And so I think and it goes beyond the written words of the development agreement or the CUP, that's going to be a measure that goes into that compliance review. And so I would want to make certain that we have a full record of what's been discussed here when it comes time for that evaluation for both parties.
are you just talking about the meeting that staff had with the
No,
applicant?
I'm talking about tonight.
Oh, okay. Because
Because I think that everybody wants to get along. We all want to make money. We all want to benefit the community. Then everybody should be held accountable to that. And so I think that this record ought to be very explicit, whether it's in writing in the minutes or at least a recording that's made available at the time of compliance review.
Have
What
no
I would
objection
s-
to that.
Excuse me, I wanted to hear what he had to say.
I have no objection to that.
What I would suggest is that we have a transcript made of it, a written transcript, and that be available in the future. And that way, everybody would have it for use.
Madam Mayor, may I again?
Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
Thanks a lot, Mr. City Attorney, and Mr. Fig. A comprehensive recording, a legal recording, is very important. Now, let me address it over to Mr. Butler. The last meeting that I looked at, recording on TV, was almost impossible to hear a lot of the words, the voices. 6, 8 months ago, I had a transcriber spend hours transcribing a meeting. And even with transcription and added audio things, our system wasn't that effective. Has our system become that effective this last week?
We continue to work on the effectiveness of the audio system, which means it's probably not perfect yet, but we're aware that we've had issues and we're trying to improve it.
Okay, now that's a good response for an attorney, if you were. The point being is, would this be considered the quality that we could do that Mr. Fig had asked for, to have a legal recording of it? Not from what I saw last week.
Yeah, we'll have to listen to the audio in this meeting after it's over to determine the audio quality, but I think from what I'm hearing in terms of the projection tonight, there's enough clarity there to produce a transcript.
Not if you tried to watch it on the YouTube. I mean, here we can, but.
Well, if I may say, if it turns out that that is not possible to get an accurate transcript, then I will pursue alternatives. And one of those is, immediately comes to mind, is to send a letter to all of the parties advising of the representations and statements that were made here tonight, and confirming that they had been made and that they would be consideration in the annual development review.
Okay. May I? Thank you. Considering what, and I like that idea, Mr. City Attorney, it's kind of a conundrum here, and way back when I was young, a lot of places that I lived, particularly in Alaska, a man's word was a man's word. You didn't dishonor it no matter what. You would die, in a sense, if it was required to live up to your word. Nowadays, everybody wants to get a hold of something, and if it isn't in writing, it isn't so. We see that time and time again in our national and our local and our state government. I follow along with what you request, so therefore I make a motion that we postpone this. Pardon?
Mr. Hensley, we're not done yet.
You're
with
not
the
ready
public
for a
hearing.
motion? Oh,
No,
come
no,
on,
no.
I wanted to do a motion.
No, we even have another speaker card here.
Well,
Yeah, and then it's probably, I have a couple of questions here too, so.
Public hearing was closed.
Oh, it was? No, it's
It
still
wasn't?
open. Yeah, I opened it, we haven't closed it.
Oh, all right, I thought
Yeah.
you closed it.
No, not yet. We've been discussing this. I do have a couple of questions for Mr. Stewart. So is this the first application that has come through for the city that includes both medical and adult?
Thinking back, and I would say yes. However, the ones that are forthcoming will all be for recreational and medical.
So I believe when we were first looking at the applicants as they were coming through, we were first prepared for the medical use marijuana because we weren't yet at January 1st. I think that's what we were looking at. And so we knew that perhaps those that were granted permits would have to come back to have a separate agreement for adult use.
Right, the ones, just like what I mentioned earlier, any time that there's any change or modification, as we call it, to an application, whether it be to expand, say the use itself of the dispensary, or to expand the actual use going from medicinal to add recreational, that would be a modification to their application, and yes, they would be required to come back before you with that modified application.
And so when was the date when we decided that we could have both, we could have the applicant apply for both?
December 18th.
December 18th.
Correct.
So from that point to now, we haven't had anybody apply for both.
Yes, we have.
We
Like
have.
I said, all of the, we've had a couple that have amended their applications, such as DBO. DBO, when they originally came in back in September, was medical only, but because we were still in the process of reviewing their application, they were able to amend it before coming to you in the first place. We've had a couple others that have done the same, and then the ones that have subsequently applied after January 1st have all applied for both recreational and medical in one single application.
So the applicants, if they were under review, they could amend their application.
That's correct.
But if the application, if the permit was granted, it would have to be another application they would have to do for adult use?
Correct. They will have to go through that process because we don't have we have not provided or come up with an actual modification process separate. So at this point, Mr. Tatum, Mr. Watson, and then our other one at Safeport would all, Lonnie would need to come back with a separate application for modification.
Do you have a date in mind that you're going to do that?
Well, it's up to them whenever they bring in their applications and we bring them through the process.
And so we don't have to prepare anything from the staff perspective first? No, we just have to wait till somebody applies then for that kind of a permit?
Correct, and then we'll take them back through the same process.
We're reactive. Okay,
Right.
we're reactive.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
okay. And then I also, I will, yeah, I'll call on you as soon as I finish here. And in terms of the locations where we could have dispensaries, can you identify again the zones that these dispensaries have to be in?
Sure. The C1 zone, which is commercial, and the mixed-use zone, which is what we call R4. So all of our commercial shopping centers, effectively, as long as they're not within 600 feet of a school. So, for instance, the one right across the street from us would not qualify because it's too close to Wainimi Elementary. And then the properties along Pleasant Valley, such as the last application that we reviewed, are in the R4 zone or mixed-use zone. So those would be the appropriate areas for dispensaries.
So really, we only have a couple of places anyway within the city that meet either the C1 or the R4?
We have we potentially have quite a few up along Channel Islands. However, the owners or at least the management companies of the largest shopping centers, for various reasons, are not leasing to cannabis uses, and so those are all off the books at this point. So it's mostly the smaller shopping centers that are left, and even those are filling up very fast. And what I mean by filling up is that basically the landlords or the property owners are entering into exclusive leases and therefore only allowing, say, one business in the entire center. So maybe where we thought we'd have several in a building, we're finding now that we will not be seeing that opportunity. So we are finding it very difficult to help anybody find a location at this point because they're filling up so quickly. And so we'll be seeing, I think we're kind of peaking on the number of applications we'll be bringing forward that aren't already in.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mr. Hensley, you had a... Yes, I do have a card. I thought maybe you had some questions. Yes, I know that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have Hugo Alanis, who has filled out a speaker card for this item, correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for letting me come up here. I'm a concerned citizen. I've been in this community for about, going on 30 years, and this is a big milestone. It was banned for so long, over 10, 12, 13 years, and now we're at a position where we have one. Now, I'm feeling like in my community now, I don't want to be like LA.
I don't want different shops to be coming up where my kids are, and now you have different people, different places. Like, we have one. How many more do we need? How many more do we need, really? And then earlier you said something about a Kush Fest. Like, so many people in this community hate it. They hate the whole smoking thing. And now that we have this one location where, okay, you could go get your medicine. Go get your medicine at this location. We're not seeing drug dealers out in the beaches anymore. We're not seeing drug dealers out at the parks no more. All these drug dealers are getting swiped out by medical, because that's what it is, and that's what we want. As a community, we don't want outside cities to come in and take our revenue. We don't want that. We want people to actually say, you know what, we grew up here. We know what we talk about. We go down the street and they know our name. You know, like a lot of the shopping centers that they go to. I've been to every single shopping center here in Oxnard. I grew up here. I could go anywhere. And that's what the community is afraid of. These outside cities just coming in and bullying us out because they have the pockets. We don't. We don't. So please, 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 this is a big milestone, and I'm really passionate about this. Don't let outside cities take our city away from us. And that's pretty much all I have to say, and thank you for your guys' time.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, if there aren't, did you already speak on this, Steve? No, I think we'll just grant one for everybody who wants to speak. Thank you. You know, because we need to make sure that we record all of this. I think you've already had an opportunity. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Gamma, I will consider it this time only. Please come up.
Sorry to bother you. My recollection is that the council approved medical marijuana ordinance, period. Is that wrong? I never recall council approving a recreational ordinance.
Yeah, December 18th of 2017.
Okay.
The original ordinance was amended to allow for adult use.
Okay. Then the other question I have is, isn't there a identical agreement for community outreach or community support for each dispensary? It sounded like there might be a different wording in the different applications.
The way the process has worked is that the applicants propose what they want to do, and then it is up to staff to work with them, and then for the council to approve what they want to do. So we're not dictating what their community outreach has to be, but it factors in the decisions to bring it forward and to approve it.
So with the approved medical establishments right now, they have different community outreach agreements? Is that true? Because it just doesn't seem...
They vary in small, because they want to support different kinds of sectors.
Nonprofits, yeah.
You know, one has a particular interest in one kind of issue and wants to support that sector of the community and nonprofits, and another has a particular focus on something else. So
is the money amount, percentage amount, the same for each?
You mean the revenue that's coming from the city?
Whatever
5%?
money they...
the city's revenue is the same for each.
And is there a percentage for community outreach is the same?
No, it's not a percentage. Well, in an occasion it can be a percent. Like I said, they propose, and we enter to an agreement that it varies. It depends upon the totality of the application.
Okay, that just seems kind of odd that you wouldn't have an identical agreement for each one. That's all I'm saying.
The percentage, though, of what the city is set at 5%. That's the commonality. Depending on their business, it could be more or less depending on what kind of business they're going to drive. You know, like what that 5% of their revenue is going to be. That's a difference, but the 5% is the commonality.
Okay, okay.
Does that help you?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Okay, so are there any other questions here? All right, so then we will close the public hearing at this point and consider the evidence. Yes, Councilmember
Thank you,
Hensley.
Madam Mayor. I appreciate stepping back into something that I'd started to say a little bit earlier. Nowadays, the world is it has to be in writing and signed to be, because you can give your word, and word doesn't mean a lot anymore. And it needs to be legal for a city. I kind of like the idea that our city attorney came up with, that we need some sort of record, either transcripts or documents that's brought forth. And I see no harm. We're not under a pressure to get anything done right now. And I think that perhaps we should let this set and calm down. There was a death that the owner won't be able to sign until later on, that we might postpone it to the next council meeting and then solve the issue at that time. And we can have all of these other taken care of.
So was that a motion then?
I don't know. Is that a motion?
Is that your motion? Okay, is there a second to the motion? Okay, so motion dies for lack of second. Is there another motion to be made for this?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'll make a motion for approval of the various items related to this matter, with the understanding that we'll have a transcript or some other recording of discussion that's occurred in the course of this deliberation that will be used as a measurement when we come to the point of reviewing development agreements for this property, which includes at this point 2, if we approve this item tonight, and that both will be held accountable to the same standards. So that would be my motion.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay. Madam, yes.
May I?
Yes, Mr. City
It's actually
Attorney.
a point, not a question,
Yes.
which is that it's actually a conditional motion. And I want to make this clear to the applicant that the motion as posed is for approval subject to a satisfactory statement of what you've agreed to and represented in this meeting tonight. So that's the only condition that's being appended to it, but that's the condition. And have I stated correctly, Councilmember Fick?
That works for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that work for the applicant? No objections.
And the second, Mr. Sharkey, is that okay with you? All right. So, Madam City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig,
Yes.
Councilmember Hensley,
I abstain. I think there's issues that need to be resolved, and we're very close to it, but I don't want a war going on here, and there's issues that was brought forth before the council by the attorney and the city manager that I think to be real need to be put in concrete, as Councilman Figg started going to that direction, but I think we need to solidify this. So waiting another 2 weeks, I don't think it's going to be any harm, so I abstain at this vote.
Councilmember Sharkey,
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp.
No. So, motion fails.
No, I believe the motion
A
carries
motion carries.
2 to 1.
Oh, 2 to, well, there's an abstention.
An abstention is an abstention basically is an agreement that the majority decides the issue.
No, okay, I take that back then. No at this point. I just found out all this legalese stuff. Thank you.
So, Madam City Clerk, can you just, yeah, we have 2 against the motion and 2 for, so motion fails. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I move
Yes.
that we postpone this or take it up again at the next meeting.
I second it.
Right, so we will then put it on the agenda.
It's
And
a
that would be-
motion, it hasn't been voted on.
All right, so that is a motion and a
motion.
second. All right, so Madam City Clerk, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Fig,
No.
Councilmember Hensley,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharkey,
Yes.
Mayor Schnapp.
Yes. All right, so we will take up this matter then again on April the 2nd, which is our next city council meeting. All right. So we move on to consent agenda, and that was consent agenda items A, B, D, and E, correct? And, okay,
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
all right, and I will second that.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Councilmember Fig walked out. So we have 3-0 on that. So let's go with item 9C. Mr. Hensley, you wanted
Okay.
to pull that item?
Yes, please. Do we have time to discuss it now, or do you want to wait?
Yes, we're on.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't see Chief Salinas here tonight, but could you come up, please, sir? This guy is the happiest police officer I've ever seen.
Your Honor, council members.
I'm interested in this, and I think it's absolutely fantastic that BMW has donated special bicycles for the police officers.
Yes.
Okay, they're all equipped with police and radios, et cetera, correct? I don't know the exact price, but they're expensive, right?
Yes.
Okay, approximate ballpark price,
$1,200 each.
1,200? I thought it was like 7,000, maybe not, who knows? Okay,
1,200 times 6.
pardon?
1,200 times 6 bikes, I believe.
Okay, maybe that's the accumulation. I went to a meeting at Volker Park 2.5 years ago, and they were having some drug problems over there. And the chief of police at that time was there. I think there was one other councilman. And a big concern, because that area, like some of our other areas here, are expansive and people need to get around. So there was a real happiness when the first time that we had these bicycles donated in the past, have we not?
Correct.
What happened to them?
They were utilized quite a bit.
Okay, now, I was told 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, that we no longer used them, but we did at one time, that they were supposed to be really excellent, but we'd stopped using them because we were short-staffed and we didn't have the officers to operate it. And then I was told, I don't know if it's true or not, maybe you can confirm it, that we turned around, didn't use them, and put them off to auction. Is that correct?
No, we still have the bicycles, sir.
Pardon?
We still have those bicycles, sir.
You still have the other
Yes.
group too?
Yes.
So that'll give us, how many now?
Roughly 12 bicycles. The other ones are in poorer condition
Okay,
than the new ones we have.
okay, very good. That's what I wanted to know. I like the idea. I just wanted to make sure that the police department is manned strong enough to be able to utilize them, particularly during the summertime.
You're correct. We are very short-staffed right now. We've had 5 officers that have been injured, so we've been doing a lot of overtime to try to cover shifts with minimum staffing. But as time allows, we will be utilizing the bicycles, especially for special events, high crime areas, where it's easier to get around on a bicycle than it is on a car. But they will be utilized.
Good. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Okay, so item 9C then.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right. Thank you, Sergeant Graham.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilman.
Thanks. Now we move on to item 10, Public Works Director reports and comments. So we'll start with the 10A, update on beach maintenance enhancements. Mr. Villafana.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. Tonight, I've asked that it's recommended that the City Council receive and file this report, which details the ongoing efforts to maintain high level of Hueneme Beach Park maintenance over the next 12 months. Background, in May of 2017, the City Council authorized funds from the RDA bond proceeds to perform much-needed past due maintenance at the Hueneme Beach Park. This included the following: painting of the restrooms, interior and exterior, installation of new restroom security gates, replacing the skylights, replacing the interior lights, adding additional exterior lights, adding automatic deodorizers,
painting and patching the concrete picnic tables, painting the wooden windscreens. The sections of the promenade at the end of Ventura Road were patched and painted. The colored stamped concrete at this location and at the gazebo was cleaned and repainted. The gazebo was repainted. The light poles along the promenade walk were repainted. A portable restroom was leased to provide an after-hours restroom. Enhanced restroom cleaning program was implemented that provided afternoon and extra weekend cleaning. We've developed a plan to maintain the good condition of the existing beach amenities. This plan includes the continuation of the enhanced cleaning schedule for the beach restrooms, which does require overtime, funding the portable restroom lease for another 12 months, providing funds to patch and paint the concrete picnic tables, and painting the windscreens. The maintenance work will all be completed by Memorial Day. We also plan to paint the interior of the restrooms, including this year the tile in the large restroom, and apply a graffiti-resistant coating. We will also paint the exterior of the restrooms and perform touch-up work as needed. As was the case last year, this work will be done almost exclusively with city public works staff, specifically the facilities and the street crew. The fiscal impact of maintaining the beach park at the enhanced level creates additional general fund costs of approximately $35,000 a year. The Public Works Department and the Financing Department have worked together to identify offsetting savings of more than $35,000 in the existing budget for fiscal year 2017 and 2018 and 2019. So no additional resources are being requested at this time. And in the staff report to you, I've included some before and after pictures from last year. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Villafona? No? All right, I want to commend you for a job well done here. I appreciate looking at the before and after photos because it's a good-looking place now. Yes, Councilmember Fig.
I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand fast enough. You had provided myself and Councilmember Berg, because we're kind of assigned leads on aspects of the strategic plan that the council approved last year, and gave us a walking tour of some of your ideas about reinvestment at Hueneme Beach Park. I think that's above and beyond what you've described here. Is that correct?
Oh, that is correct, Councilman Fig. I'm planning to come back in April with a detailed proposal of some of the amenities that I spoke to you and Mayor Pro-Tem Berg on.
Well, that was because there's another item here following. We have $500,000 net left on the RDA bond funds, and I want to make sure that we're not getting too far out in front of what we have left to expend. So I'll look forward to that report in April, because you would introduce some of your ideas on what needs to be attended to in terms of deferred maintenance and maybe renovation of areas of the beach that are above and beyond what you've reported here. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. So I'll look forward to hearing your report in April.
Right, and again, for clarification, we're planning to, last year when I came on board in March, there had been years of long deferred work. So it was catch-up time, and the Public Works crews did an excellent job. So this year, in preparation for Memorial Day, we're getting a head start. That's why I'm presenting this to the City Council now, because I intend to start in April. And between the Finance Department and myself and the Public Works staff, we've identified savings that are going to pay for this enhanced cleaning program that you funded last year. So we're going to be able to maintain the same level that we have now at no additional cost to the general fund. And that's what I'm reporting to the council.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Villafona?
A quick comment. I'm totally impressed. This city was kind of deteriorating and falling apart, and we have this wonderful gem of a beach out here, and draws a lot of people, or could. The bathrooms that was one of Mr. Villafona's initial things, is to clean up those restrooms, and I had complaints 2 years ago, people would come in, bring in friends from elsewhere and complained about our restrooms look like third world nation. We've gone beyond that point now, so that's commendable. Don't quit. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so there was a motion made to receive and file.
Motion made to receive and file, Madam Mayor.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right, thank you, Mr. Villafana, on that. You're up next for item 10B, authorization to award a contract to MTM Construction.
Correct. I'm asking authorization to award a contract to MTM Construction to remove and reconstruct the last 2 tennis courts at Miranda Park. It's recommended that the City Council authorize the Public Works Director to award a contract to MTM Construction to remove and replace tennis courts 7 and 8 at Miranda Park. These are the last 2 tennis courts that need to be rehabilitated. The background on this, the City Council directed staff in May of 2017 to prepare plans for the restoration of the facilities at Miranda Park. A civil engineering consultant was retained, Mr. Tim De Zamora, and the Alnalta Group. The firm performed a site inspection and provided recommendations for a multi-phase rehabilitation program. The consultant prepared plans and specifications for the rehabilitation of 6 tennis courts. That was phase 1. Phase 1 has been completed. There are 2 tennis courts left to restore. These are referred to as courts 7 and 8. These courts have deteriorated to a condition that the existing asphalt must be removed and replaced. The city again took advantage of the National Joint Powers Authority, NJPA, which competitively bid tasks with preset unit prices and specifications for general construction services, including materials, equipment, and labor costs. The California Government Code 6500 authorizes public agencies to participate in cooperative purchasing agreements like those established by NJPA, while still remaining within the city's adopted rules and procedures for purchasing. A job walk was held, and MTM Construction Incorporated submitted a proposal in the amount of $186,250.23. Staff has reviewed this proposal and recommends award and an additional encumbrance of $18,600 for a 10% project contingency. The fiscal impact. The action, if taken as recommended, will have a fiscal impact of $204,850.23. The City Council has authorized, has allocated former redevelopment agency bond proceeds for this project, the Central Community Project area. After this project, based on estimates from our finance department, the remaining balance of RDA bond proceeds will be approximately $500,000.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yep, thank you, Mr. Villafana. Are there any questions for staff? Councilmember Hensley?
Does this include Bubbling Springs Park restroom too?
No, it does not.
This is just the tennis courts and the basketball courts?
Well, the basketball courts have been completed. They are completed, and they are open to the public now.
Good.
This is the final 2 tennis courts at Miranda Park. Unfortunately, the Bubbling Springs restroom, that park does not fall within the zone for the use of the RDA, a former RDA bond proceeds. And that was confirmed by our finance department.
Okay, so then how can we clean up that park?
I'm working on that. I've got to put together a plan, and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I believe that in doing the tennis courts, there was probably, you had to do, they did 2 or 3 coats, plus they put the base rock in, I guess, then they filled in whatever crap, and they put 1 coat on. There was some concern that there was blocks or traffic cones out on tape, and apparently the contractor left that there, come back, because I went back to double check, and they were putting in a 2nd coat after it had dried a few days.
Right. We needed to let the surface, the asphalt surface, cure and dry before we could apply the surface, and we took advantage a week and a half ago of a clear window of weather. We got it in, and then we had a final walkthrough. There were some minor adjustments to the backboards that were done. In fact, they were done today, but it's been open to the public.
Very good. Now, one other issue. Will our will our tennis courts be fully operational by the time the Ojai tennis tournament comes around this year, do you think?
Oh, yes, no
There will
problem
be.
at all.
Okay.
We'll be done, weather permitting, we will be done before June 30th.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Do you need a
thanks.
motion on this to?
Well, let's see if anyone else has a question. Or anyone else have a question for Mr. Villafana? All right, so, go ahead.
Move to approve? Is this a file and approve, or is this to approval, period?
It's an
Motion to approve.
authorization.
Authorization. I move to approve the authorization.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so thank you, motion carries. And then we have an updated quarterly report from Public Works, so Mr.
Correct.
Villafana.
All right, okay, that is on. Okay, let's see, I've got the old clicker here. All right, this is the quarterly report for the Public Works Department and highlighting what we've been doing in the last 3 months. So, Miranda Park basketball courts, they were in poor condition. We had to remove and replace the asphalt. That's the contractor putting the finishing touches on the surfacing. There you have just about ready to open. So that project, as I said before, it is complete. The public is enjoying it, and we got a lot of positive feedback from the public. The strategic plan, citywide pedestrian safety. At 6th Street and Bard several weeks ago, we put in a flashing stop sign. And that is a mid-stop block. And a lot of people have been rolling it or just ignoring it. We put this in. I was out there today talking to the crossing guard and also some of the school staff. They're very appreciative. It has made a difference. Again, with pedestrian safety and traffic safety throughout the city, on westbound Channel Islands, we put in the highly reflective cross-street signs before all the non-signalized cross streets. And that was our city staff doing that. And there you see both. We have them both on the left and right side, and that is westbound Channel Islands. These traffic improvements have all been paid with gasoline tax, no general fund money. Unfortunately, on the President's Day holiday, we had an impaired driver hit and severely damage one of the crossings on Channel Islands Boulevard. This bridge is the first one east of Channel Islands Boulevard. I've been inspected it. There's no immediate danger of failure. I've had a structural engineer go out there with me. I'm getting a proposal this week for the design of the repair, and we'll go out to contract on this. It is going to be an expensive design and repair. We are actively pursuing the insurance company of the impaired driver with the assistance of the interim deputy city manager and the police chief. We will have to front this money from our gasoline taxes, but we're looking to recoup as much as possible from the impaired driver's insurance. This is another picture of that damaged bridge. We do have it barricaded off, and we monitor it, making sure that we have blinking lights out there at night, et cetera. Did you have a question, Councilman? Okay. Okay. Okay, coming soon. All right. Okay, I've ordered 4 new radar speed signs. Right now we have one. We've only had one for years. And good, it's blinking. They've come in. They just arrived this week. And weather permitting, but we're going to have rain this week. We're going to be setting the foundations within the next 4 weeks. These 4 additional radar signs will be up. We're going to have one on westbound Channel Islands Boulevard before Lido. We're going to have 2 on Surfside. We're going to slow that traffic down along the beach. And then we're going to have another one on Wainimi Road. Again, this was all funded with gasoline tax money, and you can, thank the voters for SB 1. All right. All right. Miranda Park Tennis Court 7 and, oops. Let's see. Miranda Park Tennis Court 7 and 8, you just approved the contract or authorized the award of that. We should be done by the end of June. So we will we'll meet that Ojai tennis tournament. And then, coming soon, a citywide pavement maintenance plan. We will be putting together a comprehensive citywide pavement maintenance plan that I'll be coming back to the city council with in the summer, probably July. We'll detail out, we'll have visuals for you so you know which neighborhoods are going to be crack-filled, slurry-sealed, and we'll present a complete package. And my goal is to have a 5-year pavement maintenance plan. So we can be well coordinated with utility replacements. We also do plan to put a sidewalk repair plan in place. Again, all of that will be funded by the additional gas tax revenue that is provided by SB 1. And beach park preventative maintenance coming in April. We discussed that here. That's what the report and file were. Last year, that was Mark Dahl. He was cleaning and painting that one bench, and you've seen the results. And we're going to do that tune-up work starting next month. Now the team, this was done by the Public Works team. This is my streets team. That's the landscape team. The solid waste, wastewater, water, and the rest of the staff. Now, those are the people that get this done. So, are there any questions?
All right. Are there any questions for Mr.
Yes, if I
Viafano?
may.
Yes, Councilmember Hensley.
It dinged me something that you were talking about. You satisfied me with the road seal type 2 slurry and the crack fill. Going back to the beach, we're doing a fantastic, where we are, the city, you are, your crew, doing a great job of preparing to make it a destination point to come to our beach. The one thing that just kind of popped up to my surface, the bathrooms and some of the other facilities are looking nice now, but the Surfside restaurant, or the seafood restaurant there, great food. But who is responsible for revitalizing that building and making it look nicer again? Because it isn't fitting the complement of the rest of the beach facilities.
I don't know the answer. I would have to research that and see what the contract was, the agreement with the city and the owner of that. I do not know at this time who is responsible for the maintenance of that building. But I'll find out and I'll report back to you.
I would be most grateful. Maybe Mr. Butler might have some ideas on some of his documents too.
Yeah, we're the landlord. We still own the building, but we'll, as Mr. Viafano said, we can check the lease and see what it spells out in terms of maintenance responsibility.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Councilmember Fig.
Thanks, Don. A couple of comments. The police department went out at the tip of the pier and had this wonderful shot of their department. How come you're just using a parking lot? Do you think you could maybe upgrade your, can we buy you a camera or
a drone?
A drone? How about the new tennis courts, 7 and 8? Are they going to be pickleball standards so that they can accommodate the activities that are occurring down there? And I don't really know much about pickleball. I just know that there's quite a gathering of folks down there. Have you been working with the pickleball folks, make certain that we can accommodate their needs?
At this time, there's no plan, and the contract does not provide for pickleball striping for that. If we stripe it for pickleball, then you cannot use it for tennis tournaments like Councilman Hensley wants. My concern would be that we would not have sufficient tennis courts to support the Ojai tournament. So that would be my reluctance in dual striping of those 2 new courts.
I meant that almost facetiously, but
well,
but that's interesting that you don't have the ability. What about temporary striping so that that activity can be accommodated?
I'd have to look at that,
Yeah.
but my big concern was to provide, tournament quality courts to attract that type of play. You know, I'd have to look at what type of temporary markings could be put in. I imagine we could put, you know, some offset marks so that somebody could put a, like a tape down type, yeah, snap chalk, something type thing for, you know, some play, but so that it could be readily restored to the quality for tournament tennis.
Oh, absolutely, I understand that. I suspect that you'll get some suggestions from Mr. Rollins.
I'm sure I will.
How to accommodate that. And I had a third question, but I forgot what it was, so I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Well, you know, part of, good comment, Councilmember Fig, because part of the 70-year anniversary celebration events, one of them is going to be the, you know, the pickleball and the grand reopening of the tennis courts and all that kind of stuff. So you can look at the calendar and come check it out.
Now you've raised that. So Mark Dahl, is he related to Bert Dahl, our first mayor?
I do not know, but I was thinking that I was going to ask him tomorrow because I don't know. He resides in the city. He may be a relative. I do not know.
That would be interesting to know.
Mm-hmm. That would be.
Madam Mayor, may I make
Yes.
one inquiry of Mr.
Yes,
Villafana?
yes, Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Villafana, there's a rumor going around that you ran the Los Angeles Marathon this weekend.
Yeah. That is
that
correct. That is
Oh,
correct.
wow.
Yeah.
And you've already gotten out of your hospital bed?
Oh, that was my 10th LA Marathon.
Ah,
10th.
very
Wow.
impressive, I have to say. I
That is
congratulate you.
awesome.
Thank you.
And you complete it.
Yeah, oh, of course.
I just want to make sure. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Wow. All right. So any other questions for Mr. Villafana?
Actually, just kind of a side note to Mr. Rawlings over here. Say Smart and Final, I went in there the other day, 2 weeks ago. They had these big gallon jugs of huge dill pickles for only $7. I'll pick you up a jar if you want, okay? I think it's critical that we do something for the pickleballs. I don't know how we're going to do the pickleballs with this temporary striping or whatever. I also believe, because that's a good constant stay, as I understand it, people participate with it, but when we come to a situation where we have tennis tournaments, and if we get caught into this realm, the league of the Ojai tennis tournaments and so on, we might be bringing more and more people in all the time. So those courts are critical to us, but the pickleballs are important too, so I hope we can work out something. Thank you.
I'll work with him and see if we can come up with a way to provide for temporary markings, but retain the ability to have a competitive tournament court.
Okay, and one other question for that. The little stand down there, the hot dog stand, the storage room and so on, will that ever be coming back again when we have, say, a major pickleball tournament or a tennis tournament or anything like that? Do we foresee?
Yeah, the Public Works crew, when we renovated the restrooms, we painted the exterior, we cleaned the skylights, we did the exterior. One of my suggestions had been the possibility of a police storefront in there, but there were currently it's vacant. It needs to be cleaned, painted, and some work done in there. And you know, it's historically it's been you know, a recreational facility. So I think eventually it'll probably go back, but you know, that's not my department. We'll provide support as needed.
That's a capital idea, particularly if the police department doesn't mind going along with it, because that park has been languishing for a long time until you came along. And we've had a shooting down there about 3 years ago. We've had gang activities, a lot of homeless people living around there. As we clean it up and make the area look nicer, it'll be less appealing to them. So, and it'd be more appealing to the general public coming in. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and so with that, I think, Mr. Rollins, did you want to make a comment on this? No, yes? Good.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Villafano for handling all my memos to make sure that, like, you know, both the tennis courts and the pickleball courts are something our community can be proud of. And he's done an excellent job of bearing with me on those things. And he's probably never played any of these sports, even though he's an excellent runner, he's probably never played those sports. Nonetheless, I agree that we want, of the courts, we want to keep 6 tennis courts that are purely lined for tennis. In order to run a small tournament, or in order to encourage the OHI tournament, or encourage some of the high school programs, you need like 6 courts. That's why it's essential to finish those final 2 courts. If pickleball becomes popular, one of the unique things about, well, even more popular, one of the unique things is on one tennis court, if it's fenced properly, you can actually put 4 pickleball courts on one blueprint of a tennis court. So on the 2 that we've already dedicated, we right now have 5 full pickleball courts on those 2, and there's a possibility of actually putting in 8. One of the things that I'm hoping happens if we have money available is to be able to put in permanent poles, like you have permanent tennis poles, put in permanent poles for pickleball. The reason being is right now we have a large volunteer group that brings out the portable nets and plays in the morning and then brings them back in. But that precludes anybody being able to play other than when they bring those things out. Just like, so like a tennis, you can come and play anytime that it's daylight. You can't do that in pickleball. You can only come when the volunteers are. So eventually, if they put in permanent poles, which I've talked to Mr. Villafano about that, and it doesn't cost too much money, we can have permanent, so then people can come anytime during the day and enjoy that sport.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And
yes.
another quick point, and
Yes.
thanks a lot for Mr. Rollins' comment to this. Mr. Villafano, one of the problems that we had down there before was the lighting. Has that been part of our cleanup project of the tennis courts also?
Not the lighting for the tennis courts. There's some structural issues with the existing poles. It'd be very expensive, and because of the impact of, there is no lighting on the tennis courts now. And the city manager and I have discussed it several times, and we felt that it's very expensive, and that we would have to have a public outreach for the developments that are around there to see how the lighting would affect them and other issues. Mm-hmm. With respect to the walkway lighting out there, I've directed the facilities crews to check on them, and if there's lights that have issues, to check them and make sure that they're operating properly.
Are you using LED or metal halide, or?
We're using LED okay. As we replace them.
Good.
So.
Okay, and so we're not burdened with the old amber stuff and
no,
incandescent.
we're eventually going all to LED.
Great, thank you so much, sir.
Okay, so any other questions for Mr. Villafano for item 10C, quarterly updates? No? All right, so then we move on to item 10D. And I think you're up again, or is it Mr. Camarillo? Oh, okay.
Mr. Camarillo
yes, Mr. Camarillo. All right, super.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and those of us who are still here. What you have before you is our city's policy whenever there is going to be a recommendation for out-of-state travel to come and get council's approval. I am asking for approval to send my solid waste coordinator to the Waste Expo 360, which occurs at the end of April in Las Vegas. It is the largest expo / educational solid waste function that's around. Normally this doesn't get this far west. It normally stays in Louisiana, and
so we want to take advantage of that. It also is going to offer a lot of educational tracks that he can attend, various things with a lot of vendors, which also kind of will be very helpful in our looking at going into a full third green waste container. We're looking at software that will help route optimization, operational efficiencies, things like that. And so all of those things would be available to him in one spot. So that's why I am recommending that I get council approval to send him to attend.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Camarillo? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second. This is all a budgeted item. This is not an additional appropriation.
Correct, it was in the budget.
Yeah, okay. So there's a motion and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank
None?
you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Camarillo. We move on then to item 11A, Community Development Director and 2017 Annual Housing Progress Report. Mr. Tony Stewart.
Thank you again, Mayor, Council. So this is the first year that the city has been required to prepare a housing element update. In the past, it's only been for general law cities, but the state passed what they call a housing package, and there's another housing package on its way next year and probably the year after that and whatnot. In fact, the city of Ventura just had a workshop with their council about these housing packages, and it's something that I'm looking into along with Mr. Green as far as possibly bringing such a workshop to you just for informational purposes at some point. But as part of that housing package, Senate Bill 35 and Assembly Bill 879, which became effective on January 1st, requires all cities, including charter cities, to provide an annual report on the progress the city has made over the past year in meeting the goals, policies, and programs of its housing element. As some of you may be aware, our current housing element was approved by the state back in November of 2013. It's valid from 2013 to 2021. And that element is a chapter of the general plan or an element of the general plan, and what it does, it identifies housing needs, goals, objectives, and programs to ensure that the city's housing needs are met. This is the only element within the general plan that is required to be updated on a regular basis. Part of that includes what they call the RHNA, or Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers, that HCD, the State Housing Community Development Department, identifies that each community has to provide. Fortunately for the city of Port Hueneme, due to factors such as our being built out, our existing housing stock and whatnot, HCD was kind enough to identify that we only needed to provide 2 housing units. Most cities that I've worked with or know of have to provide hundreds, if not thousands, of units during this housing element program. So we are very fortunate in that we only have to report on our progress of providing the 2 units, as well as identifying our progress with meeting some of the other programs. So what was attached to the staff report is HCD's standard reporting document with regard to tables to identify where we are in meeting those the construction of those 2 units. We haven't yet, but we still do have several years to do so, as well as a discussion of how we are meeting the applicable programs that we've been working on within the past year. So that's all in your packet. And at this point, it is recommended that the council receive this information and the information in your packet and any public comment on the item this evening, and then I will go ahead and forward that to HCD as well as the Office of Planning and Research. It needs to be done by April 1st of this year, and I will make sure that that gets done as soon as possible, if not as early as tomorrow. So with that, that concludes my staff report. I wanted to bring this all up to you because this is our first item, our first time we've done this. Most likely in subsequent years, we'll probably have this on consent calendar. But I just want to provide that background for yourselves and the public since this is the first time of doing this. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fig.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that the focus is on RHNA and the new construction, which is 2 units. But the city's housing element goes far beyond just that. It talks about rehab, and I think we had a goal of 180 some odd units that needed rehab assistance. We also talked about Surfside Motel and its conversion in addition to the city's affordable housing supply. Can you, and it was absent in your report, can you provide some update on those 2 goals that the city has set?
Of course. The reason why they were absent is because they were not worked on within the past year. Because, for instance, the rehab is because we are short on staffing. That is something, though, that I hope that we can get up and running again within this next year. And hopefully we can report on that in next year's report. With regard to the Surfside Motel conversion, that has also languished in the past. That should have been final 3 years ago. It wasn't, as we're all familiar. So at this point, in fact, today, with Charlie's office's help, we are going to get this back into action. We sent out a letter today to the property owner as well as the management, letting them know that due to the fact that they have not complied, we are going to, well, we have requested that we be allowed an inspection to verify all of the progress that they've made and haven't made, any violations out there. That will include police, fire, building and safety, code enforcement, all going out and assessing all of this with the intent that within the next couple of months here, we get to see some kind of progress, whether it's voluntarily or with our assistance, so to speak. I know that Mr. Green's assistant is preparing a memo to you specifically about this for providing quite a bit more detail than I've given tonight, but that's where we are.
My suggestion then in the future, when you provide a progress report, forget HCD's forms, go outside the lines, and just go back to the adoption of what this council put in motion, which is the summary of objectives, the numeric allocation of units to the various categories of construction, rehab, home buyer assistance, acquisition, so that we can do a better job of really tracking how are we performing. And I'm not as concerned about HCD as I am about what we've identified as our goals and how are we doing in achieving the things that we've already endorsed. So in the future, because I didn't see anything in your report regarding rehab or Surfside Motel or the like, I would suggest that you broaden that report so we get back to the basics of what this council has adopted as objectives and do a comparison that way.
So noted. Yes, actually, all of this came to, I became aware of this just within a few weeks, and so there hasn't been a lot of time to get this to you. Otherwise, it would have been vetted a little bit more thoroughly, but I wanted to at least meet the minimums to get that report up to HCD.
Yeah, again, HCD's focus is largely on new construction, but in our case, in Port Hueneme, we have a different need, and I think we don't want to lose sight of that.
Yes, Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Stewart, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I would ask that we give consideration to, if you will, having 2 reports, because I hate to give the state any report that has any information on it that we don't have to have. Exactly. Because sure enough, we'll get follow-up questions and it'll generate work or requirements. So I think, your report could have 2 separate reports, one of which gets sent to the state and the other which will be more informative to the council.
Agreed.
Yeah, and certainly I know that, Mr. City Manager, you have your different department heads coming to report updates for us on a continuous basis, so I would imagine that kind of report would be coming to us.
Yeah, in fact, community development is up next month, I think it's April 2nd. So, yeah, Don debuted his quarterly report tonight. Police chief wants to continue to do his monthly reports, so he's the overachiever as usual. But the other departments will be at least on a quarterly basis, and Tony's up next month.
Yeah, because that, yeah, that, thank you. Yes.
Oh,
Did
I
you
just to
continue?
follow up,
Yes.
please. My property, my residence, abuts Surfside Motel. And I don't know what the line is here, the fine line of my ability to discuss, short of actually being asked to take action on something. Should I be recusing myself anytime an issue regarding Surfside Motel comes up?
Yeah, in terms of the limitation on a council member from a conflict of interest standpoint relating to real property issues, they've picked an arbitrary distance by which they deem you're affected. So it's at least a safe harbor that they've given us, and we know whether or not we can fall within that. So there will be, as Mr. Stewart indicated, we are aware that the council in general has a concern about that property, and we've met with staff, and one of the problems is we could have moved forward had the predecessors of the people in this room done certain things, but in order to move forward we have to generate evidence to the court that we have exhausted administrative efforts before we can take any more serious steps. So being aware as I am of the council's interest, I discussed it with Tony, and we agreed that I would have Michelle McCarran of my office. I think you've met her. I believe she was in the interview with me. She used to be with the State Attorney General's office, litigator and regulation attorney, and is a code enforcement expert in our firm, and she's preparing a memo about what has to be done, both for our guidance and just to inform the council of where we have to go before we can go where we want to go.
Well, my question is it improper for me to even have a discussion here at the dais?
It would be advisable not to discuss in any way what should be done with the property, because you're precluded not only from voting on it, but from attempting to influence those who can vote on it in any particular direction. So it's best that that you not have those discussions with council.
Well, in that case, I'll invite my wife to come and speak to the council.
Well, I wish you hadn't said that on the record.
But, you know, Mr. Fig, I live outside of those 500 feet, and so, you know, the question I had too was what's going on with the Surfside Motel. Yeah, so we look forward to then getting those details in the near future. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Stewart here? All right, so there is, let's see, do you need an approval? Receive the information. Okay. Second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None, so motion carries. And then we have item number 12, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully this will be a happy item to end the evening on. One of the comments that I've heard consistently from council members since I've been here is that we really need to update our website, modernize it, update it, just bring it into the 2018 era. And we have finally gotten to the point where we're ready to award a contract for that work. Stephanie Mendenhall, interim deputy city manager, has been working with a team that includes Aaron and Ashley, and then Michelle, our city clerk, and they have evaluated several options, looked at all of our the vendors that do this kind of work for cities, and tonight what we're recommending is that we authorize an award of contract to Civic Plus, which is actually the same company that did our original website, but they have developed an entirely new updated platform, and they'll do a comprehensive redesign for us at what I think is a really reasonable price. The other big issue now, whether you're a private sector business person or a city manager with a municipal government website, is transitioning your website to be mobile friendly, because more and more people are not sitting at their laptop or at a fixed computer site, but they're doing more and more functions on their smartphones. And the expectation is going to be more and more, even for government services, that people are going to be able to access the city and the website on a smartphone. So a big part of what we focused on in this upgrade is making our website more mobile friendly. Total cost that we're proposing is actually under $10,000 for the whole project. That's the mobility or mobile function upgrade and the comprehensive redesign, about $8,500 total. You'll recall that the council actually identified this in the strategic action plan as an item that we needed to do, and you allocated some money for that from community benefit fund dollars. There's still some money left of that original allocation, and then we've had a lot of savings in that community benefit fund account from the other mini projects that were approved of that original $200,000 that the city had sole discretion over. So what we're recommending is a small portion of the $8,550 come from saved funds in the community benefit fund. Bottom line is, what I'm saying is there's no general fund dollar commitment for this. We can do it with that community benefit fund money. Stephanie is here tonight if you had any specific questions about the redesign or Civic Plus. But we're ready to get started, and if the council approves this tonight, we'll get moving on it.
Okay, so are there any questions for staff on this item?
Yeah, if we could Stephanie come up perhaps and give us kind of a quick overview, if you would, please?
Is this your swan song?
I guess, huh?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Linda's here, and yeah. I'm gonna miss you guys. Well, we met with Civic Plus about 3 months ago. They came to us with a proposal, which was actually a very good proposal, because some of the past ones we've received have been well over the $6,000 amount, the initial fee. And so we looked seriously at it and thought it was an appropriate time to do that, because it is difficult. I don't know if you've ever tried to get on the website from your phones, but it is difficult to do that. And they have provided an option where we could utilize their services to basically move the information over into what they call widgets and things like that. That, you know, it's widgets, and I'm not techie, so they're moving it from one platform to the next, and it's very labor intensive. We will be doing a cleanup of what we've got on there before we even implement the change. And so all that will be done, and then there'll be a new look to it. So.
Question?
Okay, are there, yeah.
Go ahead, if
Are
somebody
there any
else
other
wants something. Go ahead.
questions?
Mr. Figg wanted something.
Oh,
Councilmember Figg.
couple of things. What's the timeline? Do you have any idea when we might be able to see this new improved website?
It's relatively quick. It's probably within the next 6 months that we could get it up and going. It's going to take the help of the department staff to basically clean out was outdated, update anything that needs to be updated, so then they can transition it over. So working together, we can get it done within 6 months.
One of the things that, with or without an upgrade, is an ongoing concern I have is just the maintenance of the website and updating materials that are posted and who posts what, when and where, that sort of thing. So, I mean, I love the idea of making it more user-friendly, but we have the ongoing management question here of who's going to oversee the, updating of the site itself.
My predecessor had a customer service group, a user group, and in which each department had representatives. And then those representatives had admin rights within their departments to then go into the back end, update the information. So within the city, there are about 12 people identified to go in and make changes to the site. So the capability is there. It's just, getting it so that you're regularly meeting with them, making sure the information is fresh.
So the last thing is to say goodbye and thank you. It's been a short stay, but you've done good things, and I wish you well.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's been my pleasure.
Any other questions for
Yeah,
Ms.
if we
Mandela?
could. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your service. And I heard of this before because I had approached some other website designers a few months ago to see what we could do to upgrade our TV program or website. And the one that we have right now is known to be a very good source. The thing that I'm asking now is, and Mr. Figg brought it up, is the maintenance of it, which is critical.
Right.
We're going to pay to train our department heads or whoever upgrades it so we don't have to worry about it, and they're going to be tasked to make sure that they're on target all the time.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. The final question is, does this include, and it might be Mr. Butler in here, does this include the physical television recording, the sound? Are we going to get into that one of these days?
This does not include it, but we're very close. And Stephanie, that same team of people have been working on, in fact, they've got the staff report probably 90% done. They're working on a couple of final numbers, cost information for both the camera, audio, but also the streaming, the live streaming of the meetings. So I know you've waited
I had meant to
patiently.
send you an email on it after I reviewed the last one. The camera positioning has still got some bugs on it, and when you're talking somebody's at our podium here, all you see is the top of their head. You don't see their facial expressions. There's no moving into it. There's no, if you watch the Oxnard City Council, the county supervisors, they have a good system with a camera that can visit the group of the council persons or the whoever the case might be, or the podium at the same time. And that little bug below the extra screen, which we have, kind of gets in the way when it's only up here. When we're up here and they're down there in that little dinky screen, we get in the way. So I hope that can be worked out. Plus the audio quality. Somehow or another, the audio quality is not being driven decently. We may need to put in VU meters they call them, to come in so that they can either do it automatically, I think nowadays, or, and if my case, I speak too loud sometimes and I overdrive it, so the VU meter would compress that also. So I think that's absolutely critical because it's not a very viewable program now.
Right.
Well, just so you know, with the limited amount that has been budgeted of $7,000, you're not going to get all of that at one time. But you can certainly plan for future improvements to the system. And right now what we're going to be focused on is the streaming portion of it. And the agenda, you know, the process of the agenda. Then you can also, in the future, purchase additional cameras if that's what you want to do, and look at the audio. My understanding is that the audio was tested today, this morning, this afternoon by the facilities team, and that was done, and I was assured that it was working.
Okay. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, about a year or two ago, did we not commit and spend up somewhere $7,000 to get all the cameras and everything done? Was at least we used that allocation that we had set aside before? Was that totally used or not?
Yeah, no, it wasn't totally used. There was some money spent for, you know, the biggest visible change is our little table and our live camera operators back in the back.
And a laptop for the agenda, for the meeting.
And I'm thinking that was maybe 3,000 total
about
of the original. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions then for city staff? Is there a motion then for this?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? All right, so congratulations, motion carries. And then we have continuation of open forum.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I noticed there is no item for council reports.
There isn't, you're right, but there's two number 13s.
Oh, yeah.
So.
That's lucky.
Yes. So what we'll do, could we squeeze in council reports before closed session?
Do I need to fill out a speaker card?
No. We'll grant you this pass. Oh, okay. So continuation of open forum. So at this time, we will continue public comments on matters not on the agenda. And if anybody wants to speak on any of those, you can do so at this time. Bob, was that your hand going up? Okay, all right. All right, so then, let's go to council member reports and comments. Did you have one?
Yeah, Madam
Yes,
Mayor.
council member Sharkey.
The California Coastal Commission meets in various coastal cities every month. Last week they came to Port Hueneme for the first times in memory. It's a 3-day meeting. Mayor was there, I was there, the city manager, Mr. Stewart. Dr. Baylid from Beacon staff did a presentation on the use of opportunistic sediment from the mudslides for beach replenishment. And I think it was an eye-opener for the commissioners because they have a lot of standards for sediment deposition that are, quite frankly, silly. Jack Ainsworth, who's the executive director of the Coastal Commission, gave a nice shout out to the Beacon staff who worked as intermediaries between the local jurisdictions and the Coastal Commission on that effort. The upshot may be that a opportunistic beach fill program may be revived on a permanent basis. In the afternoon, the commissioners took a tour of the Oxnard Harbor District, the Hueneme Beach, Halico, and Ormond Beach, and staff and the mayor and I met them out at our beach, and I thanked them profusely for allowing us to keep the buried riprap, which was a radical departure for Coastal Commission policy. In Goleta, they had a similar situation, but they had to take the rocks out when they put the sand in. That is, quite frankly, a legacy of Brian Brennan and his time on the commission. It's one of the things he lobbied for, and staff got it, and it was, you know, I thank them for that effort. Now, Steve Hudson, who's our local Coastal Commission staff, and I had a very frank discussion about how the staff work that they had done in our situation here. But I think the commissioners, you know, the point I wanted to make with the commissioners is that they really should believe the local folks, and that we're not trying to cheat them or put one over on them. So it was a very interesting meeting, and I think it was productive, and the point of them meeting up and down the coast is they get to see with their own eyes the situation. I think the understanding that of our situation here is greatly improved as a result of that. And on another subject, I'll just mention that the speaker at the museum, since Johnny Adamson didn't get to do this, the speaker at the museum this Saturday morning will be Frank Gorman, who is won a silver medal in diving at the '64 Olympics. And he's a really interesting guy with a great story. So if you want to come out to the speaker at the museum on Saturday at 11 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Councilmember Fick.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to ask to have an item on the agenda for our next meeting. I'm a member, as a result of an appointment here from the council, to the REACH board, and they would like to present their ideas on projects to be funded and to take a look at our community enhancement fund as the basis for those projects. So, and I think it would be good concurrently to take a look at our last increment of funding, that $200,000, that the city had greater latitude to appropriate to various projects, of what remaining funds we have that are unencumbered that could be, in fact, be reprogrammed for other projects. We did that earlier this evening, I believe, with was it a police item? I can't remember now, but we did reprogram some money that was just talked about in a general way, that these were unencumbered funds from the CEF allocation. So I think it would be a good idea to, let's get a handle on where we stand with the allocations that were previously made and what monies may still be available for reprogramming purposes. So those are the two items that, unless the council objects, I'd like to suggest be agendized for our first meeting in April.
So I was under the understanding that REACH was actually going to fundraise, not necessarily use money, that, you know, that it was going to be an additional funds that there would be available to do things in the community. So I wasn't under the understanding that they were going to delve into or request any funds from the Community Enhancement Fund. Mr. City Manager, do you have clarification on that?
Yeah, I think it's both and. I think they still will be doing a lot of fundraising for a variety of projects, but when the City Harbor Committee met this year to make their recommendations on the $100,000 Community Benefit Fund allocation from the most recent fiscal year, it was suggested that a portion, and I think it was $20,000, be given to REACH for a variety of programs that REACH would define and discuss, which could include, I suppose, then REACH giving to other organizations or to specific events. So it's kind of a, you know, I think as things evolve, fundraising will probably, we hope, be a much greater portion of REACH's annual income or revenue than community benefit funds will. But I think right now we're at a point where REACH will gladly take funds from whatever source, and it was specifically decided by the Harbor City Committee and then approved by both the Harbor Board and the Council to take a $20,000 portion of the most recent allocation and make it available to REACH.
So it would then be that that falls in line with what was recommended then on that joint group.
Right.
Yeah, because I know that when folks were being considered to come onto that board, it was kind of with the capability of raising money and being, you know, really outside of the city, perhaps, even taking a look at people who didn't necessarily reside in the city. So I wouldn't be opposed to having that come back and, you know, be vetted out and discussed. Yeah, so is that the council? Yes, I'm seeing some nodding heads. All right, so we'll bring that back onto a future agenda item. Anything else?
Well, I would like it to be the next regular meeting because that would be in sync with the REACH's board meetings.
Yeah, we'll definitely do, we can definitely do the policy discussion, I guess what I would call more of a policy discussion, for April 2nd. The accounting of the $200,000, we'll do everything we can to make that by April 2nd. That might have to go to the second meeting in April just in case somehow that takes longer than our agenda deadlines provide. But it's an important task because if we've got money available that can be reprogrammed, we want to do that and get it spent so we can get it reimbursed from the Harbor District.
Okay, all right, anything else? No? All right, so I just have a couple of things. I attended the Gold Coast Transit Board meeting, and Steve Brown is going to be receiving an award from the National Association of Women Business Owners here in April. So I'll be attending that with the folks from Gold Coast. They did a presentation on what it would take to be, what did they end up using the term? It would end up being zero emission transit system in the state by 2040. It was something set up by the state of California. So they kind of reviewed different opportunities they have maybe to adjust some of the buses that they have. You know, buses are really expensive and they don't buy them every year, but they do phase them in over the course of time. And looking at one that's all electric is actually over $1 million. And so they're really large investments. So Gold Coast Transit is taking a look at how to then get to the 2040 timeline in different phases and different windows. And so they're exploring all kinds of options there. I also attended the Ventura Council of Governments on March the 8th. And one of the presentations we heard was from the police chief of Thousand Oaks, which happens to be then a sheriff person, and they talked about safe passage, which is the goal to expand the program in Ventura County to really take away recruits from being recruited as gang members as early as in the elementary school level. And so they have this great program where they provide all kinds of opportunities for kids pretty much 6 days a week, including maybe even some STEM opportunities and field trips, et cetera, et cetera. And they look forward to reducing the number of kids that actually get into gangs. They talked about the 2 large gangs in Thousand Oaks, and it was incredible, this video that one of them does in order to recruit kids to do this. So it's a model program, and I just put that out there because it could be something that we work with them to consider then for the police department. I know we kept referring to, and if, you know, Fillmore, Santa Paula, and Port Hueneme, and of course of all those 3, we're the only ones that don't use the sheriff's department, but certainly it's something for us to take a look at. And last but not least, there's 2 other things I want to do. Is I want to recognize the staff for putting together the 70th celebration, because it was really an awesome opportunity to showcase the city. And with the help of Rod Butler, with the help of Michelle, with the help of Anna, the help of Stephanie, everything got put together in a couple of months, and it just went off with a bang. So thank you so much for your hard work and effort, and it was acknowledged by those that attended the celebration, so thank you so much. And we look forward to then, even Steve, we look forward to then all the upcoming events and celebrations that we're going to be coordinating with 70 in mind for the entire year. So thanks so much. Last but not least, Stephanie, you're a great addition to this team. You did a super job, and we're going to miss you. But thank you for stepping in as an interim deputy city manager. Yeah. Okay, yes. All right, so with that, then we adjourn to the next regular meeting. Oh, no closed session, that's item number 13 twice. And then we adjourn to the next regular meeting to be held here April 2nd at 6 p.m. at City Hall. Thank you.